This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. I assume everybody can hear us okay and see us. Different location tonight. So most of the board is here together. No. We have a flag here. Going to the pledge?
Absolutely. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so our first section, as usual, is public comment. And we're going to try and keep tonight the public comment to public comment, so we don't have a bunch of back and forth during the meeting. We'll just have the board kind of deliberating like the normal process. So public comment, who do we have?
Yeah, who wants to start? Kevin, do you want to start?
No.
Do it. Okay, I'll start. John Gauthier is here from the community of Greece, and he is in the CRS, and he was willing to come and speak about the CRS. And so maybe would you like to start by saying a few words?
Thank you. The CRS program is something the town of Greece we didn't go into lightly. We were on the verge of being placed on suspension by FEMA. That was almost 30 years ago. So the town fathers at that point in time decided to make sure that we don't get kicked out of the program by going to sort of the extra credit division of the program, which is the CRS, and do things just a little bit beyond the minimum requirements. At that point, we got in just sort of at the look and see point where we were getting a 5% reduction for our flood insurance policies. And we kind of hovered around there until about 10 years ago, and we had a change of administration. And I asked permission from the supervisor to see what we could do, and we went for it. And pretty quickly we got to a 7, and a couple of years later a 6. And this past year, we're going to be, in October, we'll be a 5, which translates to a 25% discount for our residents. And the generally what people want to know is what's the cost, how many more people, and it kind of surprises them when I tell them it just, there's a few people in town, there's 2 or 3 of us that are kind of excited about it, and we take it as a personal challenge. And a couple times a year we have to do a little bit of extra work, but it's not real significant. The hardest thing is being compliant. And what the program forces you to do is take a long-term look at things. When you're audited by representatives of the insurance industry, not by FEMA or DEC. And these guys are they're getting less money from you because you're getting a discount, and they want to really test to see if you're doing what you said you were doing. So they'll not only try to look for evidence of various activities that you're doing, but they'll look for elements of the code that are consistent with that. The way we made our most recent jump, I had put some practices in place in our planning process. I laid the groundwork for it about 15 years ago. And then by doing that, I was able to later codify it and pass the muster in terms of the new code and such. But it can be a benefit, but it's not for every community. It really isn't. You have to be willing to make some hard choices, and they'll at times be very unpopular. I guess I might be best to answer questions if anybody has them at this point. That's the overview of how it's worked for Greece. Yes, yes, Mr. Miller.
I have one. What percentage of your community is in the 100-year floodplain? Roughly.
It's a relatively small amount, probably less than 25-30% of the entire community.
Thank you.
But a larger percentage is within a very small distance. We only have 230 policies townwide.
Thank you for the information, Mr. Gauthier. What is this is Ed Morton, I'm one of the trustees. What is the annual budget of Greece?
It's a large community. I couldn't tell you. We're a community of 100,000 people. So it's we have 40,000 tax parcels. I know that. But I couldn't tell you what our whole budget is, or even the budget of the DPW where I work. But it's I think it's probably fairly substantial. Probably one of the larger budgets of all the communities in the upstate area.
Do you know how many code enforcement officers you guys have?
About a half dozen.
But once you're in the program, it takes what percentage of a full-time person to keep you in? If you make that commitment to get in with the standing.
If you have the proper people, there's pretty much our program is a two-man show, and it's something that probably takes me, I'd say it probably takes me 3 or 4 days a year, and a similar load on a gentleman that works in planning. But we're standing on the shoulders of giants, in that we've been in the program at this point for 30 years, and the only time we really panic is when they every 4 or 5 years they change the manual and the scorecard, and we have to do a little hustling at that point. But it's not onerous once you're in and running.
So could you project for a new community if we say, okay, somehow we'll find the manpower to get in, but could you project what the sustaining manpower would be if you're new?
I think to get started, it would probably take about a half a person year if you had a reasonably competent person doing that. It would be somewhat onerous to start. There are consulting firms that get involved in that.
And then once you're in, how much of a person would it be?
I don't think it would be as onerous as what I described, mine being, because I'm dealing with a much larger community, and we're a developing community still. We probably have 40% of our community that is still subject to development, and an awful lot of my head banging is with developers, and I'm already doing that as an advisor to my planning board. But it's not very onerous once you're in and running, particularly if your ambitions are relatively modest, if you're looking to save 5 or 10%, it's not a big lift.
Well, and
I
if
work,
over time you work to the higher ratings, then, well, the lower numbers, then you spread out the effort.
right. The city of Batavia, about 3 or 4 years, I worked with them in getting up to speed, and they hopped right into the program at the level 7.
Wow.
They had a city manager, a deputy city manager that was a dynamo, and she just made it her mission. The problem was there were a large number of people that were just abandoning their homes in the floodplain because their insurance rates were so high. And there's a creek that runs right through the middle of Batavia. And she did it to just make sure that, they didn't lose their tax base. And they hopped in with great enthusiasm, and they got a one in as a 7, which is incredible. That's very rare.
Yeah.
How many insurance policies does Owego have in the village?
I was reading
I
it today. I think there's in the neighborhood of like 644.
Oh, I mean, that's a huge number compared to what we have in terms of percentage of your population.
Yes, I think we have one of the highest percentages of flood insurance policies per capita in the state.
And
Probably the lowest budget.
well, right, but we also have a community without a lot of money. So our premiums are $750,000 in this village. And that's, so that's what we stand to impact. The county numbers, I filed a FOIL request, and the county numbers within $1,000 or $2,000, it was like 59,000 and change is the county's bill. The village's bill was around $60,000, and it didn't include the fire station across from the central fire station that I'm told the policy is quite expensive. So, and it didn't include the one other fire station. So the village and the county together probably pay about $140,000 a year, roughly, in flood insurance. So if you can start, getting some, if you can get into the CRS and start getting some money back, you can offset the support to get that 10 or 15% on the other $600,000 of everybody living in the community. You can start to offset the cost of paying the person. If the county would agree to work with the village and say, look, we all save as municipal communities. And if the county could say, look, so it benefits us too, we could help resource, then there's a chance there. And I think risk rating 2.0 is coming. Flood insurance is only going to get more expensive. Climate change is here, and most of our village is in the floodplain. And I don't understand why the village would not prioritize smart floodplain management policy and protecting our village. I'm kind of at a loss. And so Rick is also here, who I asked to come to this meeting, and I asked him to speak. He was involved in the compensatory storage calculations of the elementary school, and I told him what's happening, and he also agreed to speak. So if you want to say a few words, Rick.
Mayor, I don't know who's speaking to us. I don't know who these people are. I can't see that. I can't. No one's telling me who they are. No one's doing it. I don't know who anybody is.
So John, I'm Julie Nucci. I live in the village of Owego. John, who was speaking, is from the community of Greece, New York.
Does he have a
And
name?
he's,
Do I have a name?
yeah, it's right on the screen.
I can't read the screen. That's why I keep asking you to identify yourself.
Okay,
Sorry about
John, do you want to just introduce yourself with your
Yeah,
full name?
that's what I want everybody to do.
I'm John Gauthier.
Thank you.
I'm the town engineer for the town of
Should
Greece.
be able to see, I can see everybody that's on there now to chat with. So I should be able to voice my opinion.
I'm the town engineer from the town of Greece.
Thank you, John.
Rick?
I'm Rick Hoyt. I'm based out of Binghamton. I've been dealing with floodplain issues and analysis and flood insurance studies probably for close to 45 years. I have worked in the village of Owego. I was involved with the elementary high school. I was a sub-consultant that did the hydraulic studies. And, you know, most of you are probably aware that that school was demolished and elevated. They brought in about 40,000 cubic yards of fill, and that was placed in the floodplain, not in the floodway of Owego Creek. And we did get compensatory storage reduction by regrading some of the athletic fields and such, that we did get a balance there when we actually got a decrease in water surface elevation as you propagate upstream towards the high school. Been involved in some other studies in the village, and I think Julie just asked me to join in the conversation and answer any questions about what my thoughts were with your compensatory storage clause in your flood damage code. I have seen other communities have that in. It is much more restrictive than the basic FEMA requirements. And, you know, I think where I've seen it before, City of Keene has one very similar up in New Hampshire. And it's a very flood prone community, probably half the communities within the floodplain. And it's a very similar type application. So, you know, I think the floodway codes are fine in the village. You know, basically, thou shalt not develop in the floodway area unless you can prove that there's absolute zero increase in the base flood elevation. I think that's good. And I guess I'm here to answer questions or, you know, provide additional comments. I think the issue with the compensatory storage, and Julie, you know, reached out to me just to join into this meeting, is, you know, what about the small homeowner with a lot that wants to do the right thing and elevate his house? He brings in some fill, but he doesn't have enough room to, you know, provide excavation, a similar volume of excavation on his property. And could there be a middle ground in that clause? Don't eliminate the compensatory storage clause, but maybe, you know, try to redefine it a little bit, that, you know, small projects, maybe there's a threshold that you don't have to worry about that too much, or you can do a hydraulic study and, you know, kind of prove that you're really not affecting anything. So I think there is a middle ground there that might make sense.
Thank you for introducing and telling me all that stuff about who you are. And I appreciate that part. And then I'm with the content.
All right, so we're still in public comment. Does anybody have anything else on the?
Yes, this is Laura Young. I have been researching how flood insurance is anticipated to go up in October. Am I correct in that, Mr. Gautier?
It's going to change. Some will go up, some will go down.
Well, that's
Okay.
as a
But it
result,
is basically an unknown element. Sorry, John.
as a result of 2.0, I'm not certain it will, I think that is true. Some will go up, some will go down. What we have to remember is every time that there is a change, and this has been the case over the past 20, 30 years, FEMA is trying to catch up, and they are mandated by the legislature to run it at a zero base. In other words, bring in as much money as you pay out. And with some of the spectacular storms we have had, they keep getting farther behind. And usually after they pass an act, talking about transitions and recovering lost money, there's usually a legislative process, and they tend to give a lot of it back. And but this push is part of a move to bring in more revenue. And I think with climate change on top of it, it's very likely that most rates will go up. And one of the things to keep in mind about CRS, and I shared this in a, I know with Julie in a presentation, is that most of the country is in CRS. Most of the policyholders live in a state that is more active in CRS than New York. So the rest of your the customers for the flood insurance program are already getting approximately a 15 to 20% discount. So if you're not part of the program, you're basically paying a premium. And that's a pretty harsh reality when we know prices are likely to go up. And
Thank
you're
you.
paying a premium on top of it.
Thank you. It's public comment, so I have 3 minutes. I spoke to neighbors, and we live in my house flooded, another house flooded twice. We were 90% underwater. I do not understand why we would want to change the law we have now, which leaves us in good favor with FEMA, makes us look like we have some sort of foresight and we're committed to becoming a member of CSR. As you just said, the other thing I found out is we pay a premium because we're not members and because we're not taking this seriously. It may not be, it may take work now. We have people who want to come in and develop. People know. We have people who want to come in and develop, but we don't really know what they want to come in and do other than housing. We don't know how it's going to impact our neighbors at all. And it seems to me, once again, as was already brought up, is that there could be a simple variance given to each new project. So my question again would be, why are we so willing and so quickly to do this? It almost went to vote less, meaning immediately to pull a law, to change a chapter of a law, which actually could put us in good standing to get a reduction, to get into CSR and get a reduction. We're paying a premium. It would save the village money. It would save the county money. The only people it might not save money are outsiders coming in to put up housing units for profit. I went and spoke to my neighbors. Many of them are considering just paying off the mortgage of their house so they don't have to be covered under FEMA insurance at all because it's such a huge expense. That is really sad, because if those houses get flooded, and these are homeowners, these aren't slum landlords, which the village has a lot of, which some of these slum landlords, their rentals went under and they had to be demolished. And you lose your tax base. These people too cannot afford any increase. We are not a hugely wealthy village. So these people are going to be made to make choices like not having flood insurance at all. And I can tell you that if their houses do flood, they will abandon them and you will lose your tax base that way. And believe me, we do pay taxes. We may not be on Front or Main, but we are paying taxes. Once again, our own attorney said that there was a way to do this with a variance that would go through zoning. Why would we give up something that could benefit the people who actually live in our community rather than the outsiders coming in to build, we're not even sure what, where, and make it easier on them? And that's all I have to say. But my neighbors and I both agree that, you know, if it goes up by 18%, we're already paying so much. A lot of people will just pay off the rest of their mortgage. If it floods, it floods, and they'll walk away from it. So once again, why don't we take care of our community and the people who actually live here? And it seems like people who don't live in our community, who may work here or work for the county, they don't live in Owego. They have no skin in the game. They don't care. They live elsewhere. They're not paying the taxes. They're not in a flood zone. They weren't 90% underwater. And once again, your elected officials are actually supposed to represent the community and not necessarily outside interests who want to slap up housing. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I just want to bring up one other point which came out in my email conversation with Rick, which was that, this is Julie Nucci talking again, had the compensatory storage not been followed for the elementary school, then it puts the high school at risk of flood. So you have to really not, I mean, you have to look past this one project that you want to do and just make sure that your development isn't hurting the neighbors. I called Scott Edsel this morning and I asked on Liberty Street how far below BFE is, and you would have to add 3 to 4 feet of fill around that building to get it the lowest adjacent grade to base flood elevation. Around a building that's going to take up a certain amount of a block, that's a lot of fill. So I mean, that's a lot of fill. So then you're sacrificing potentially flooding of all of the neighbors because some Ithaca company wants to build a building. It's serious.
It looks like Kevin has his hand up.
Yeah, it's just Kevin Millar, Village resident. I sent the trustees and the mayor an email with a lot of information on it, which I won't read verbatim tonight, but I would like it entered into the record. I would like to just mention that the Tioga County Hazard Mitigation Plan is a plan that's done every 5 years. It takes around 9 to 12 months to produce. It has a representative from every municipality in the county and spends a lot of time producing this document. I just want to read a couple of excerpts from this document that I think are somewhat pertinent to this issue. One is, and I got the pages cited on my email, so you can read it later. Of the population exposed, the most vulnerable include the economically disadvantaged and population over age 65. Economically disadvantaged populations are more vulnerable because they're more likely to evaluate their risk and make decisions based on economic impacts. I'll skip the rest of that one, but the one that I think is most important is projected development. And I put it in highlights. The county intends to discourage development within vulnerable areas, which is floodplains, and to encourage higher regulatory standards on the local level, which is compensatory storage. What this says in this document is exactly counter to what is some party is expecting the village to do. I think that if this is done, it basically makes everybody who participated in this long-term and long-taking project, it's a slap in the face to them. Furthermore, I think a consultant was paid for both of these events, and Elaine will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it costs around $60,000 to pay a consultant to generate each of these flood damage mitigation plans. I mean, are we wasting our money to make plans just to send them into FEMA to get an approval? or are we intending to follow them? That's about all I have to say, really. I mean, I'm stymied as to why anybody would come up with a project like this in the floodplain.
I have one last, this is Julie Nucci. I have one last comment and then I promise I'm going to shut up. So with respect to the community assistance visit, that visit for people, if they don't know, that visit happened in 2019. So in 2019, Kevin was pushing and that community assistance visit happened. So we're already a few years into this. And then in the last 6 months, we have now cleared all of the violations of the community assistance visit except 2. One, I believe we could get forgiven if only the last one gets cleared. I worked very closely with Ron Schmidt to satisfy the regulatory review of the community assistance visit, and we sent that document in, and that document was accepted. Ron Schmidt, who is the retired certified floodplain manager from the town of Owego, is willing to work on a per diem basis on floodplain issues. So we have a person who knows Owego, who knows what the situation is, who is willing to work to make this happen. So it's not like we have to find a champion. We have a champion who I think would very willingly help us get through this time. I work full time, but I will continue to do as much as I can on a volunteer basis to keep this going because it's really important to me. I know Kevin will still put in the effort, but it shouldn't just be unpaid volunteers shepherding the flood policy and management of one of the most flood prone communities in the state. We need the support of the village as well, but we have a path forward if you choose to embrace it.
This is the last time I'll speak to you. This is Lori Young. The savings we would get as a village if we get CSR, the effort we would pay for that per diem champion would come back many folds over. It's like watching once again a bad decision being made very quickly for some reason. No time given, really. There was almost a vote on it last meeting right after opening public comment and discussing it. I don't understand the rush. I think it's a huge thing to do. I think that we're showing no lack of vision and we have no foresight. Climate change is real. We will most likely flood again. Our insurance premiums will go up. We're paying premium price now. The village will actually save money if they commit at all to getting in line with the rest of the country and doing this. Or we can make the bad decision for outside, developers to have housing thrown up and neighbors suffering. And I'm telling you, people will just opt out of insuring their house and you will lose your tax base when they walk away from homes. Thank you.
John, can I ask you a question? How long did it take for you to gain CRS status? How many years were you going through this before you actually got approved and accepted into that?
I wasn't part of it, but I believe it at that point it took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And it was a big problem because we had we were behind the 8 ball in a big way. So there was motivation there, but I believe one of the people in the building department championed it at that point to get our foot in the door.
I mean, it's a little off topic, but last week there was mention of towns taking 20, possibly 30 years to reach this status. And I was just curious how far you were from that spectrum.
Well, like I said, it took the city of Batavia 1 year and they hopped in as a 7. It really depends on the enthusiasm. It sounds like you've got some people that are enthusiastic and, people that are in the program, are here to answer questions and help. Rick and I are online and, we're here because we're interested and want to help another community. And if we can, make somebody not have to go through as painful of a learning curve as we took at some point in time, we would love to help out.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Any more public comment? I know Amanda wanted to say something. Somebody unmute her. Amanda, I think you're going to unmute yourself. There you go. Maybe. Can't tell if you're white now.
Technology on parade.
While we're waiting for Amanda to hook in, can I just say a couple more words?
Sure, go for it, Kevin.
Okay, these are some excerpts. They're in my email, but I think they're pertinent. Municipal land use strategies for improving flood resilience. I want to just quote 3 things at him. 1, government has a affirmative duty to prevent harm and prevent unnecessary exposure of people and property to flood damage, and to direct new growth away from designated flood hazard areas, and also to provide affordable housing in safe areas that are not prone to flooding. I just, it's redundant, but I guess it's got to be. Thank you.
So this message from Amanda, so she will, I just know she wanted to say something in public comment. See Elaine unmuted. Elaine, do you have anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say that in our last floodplain hazard mitigation plan iteration, the village of Owego, the consultant again asked if the village of Owego wanted to have CRS as a goal and an action mitigation strategy. And again, it was decided to leave it out because the village of Owego doesn't have the resources that it takes to enter at least right now, you would have to invest a lot more in the code enforcement and DPW department, human resources in order to be able to do that. You have an inordinate amount of land in the floodplain and a very, very understaffed highway department and DPW in order to be able to accomplish it.
Could you explain more about that, please?
It takes qualified professionals or, as I believe John said, a consultant to help the village of Owego accomplish the items necessary to even enter the CRS. And there just is not the budget there now to do that.
Once again, we're getting not really information at all. How many hours, how many people are you talking about? You've looked into this. I've tried to find out from the county and gotten nothing. So maybe you can enlighten us on that.
There's one item that I can remember in particular is a repetitive loss study or analysis of claims and events in the repetitive loss areas of the village of Owego. That alone would need a consultant to perform that analysis. There is no qualified professional to do that.
I don't want to contradict anybody out there, but I did the repetitive loss analysis for the town of Greece in this for our last cycle review. And once I had the information, it took about 2 hours. Now, I've got a GIS system, but even if I didn't have it at work, I've got GIS at home. And if you have GIS and the parcel information and the data from FEMA, it's really a very simple matter, particularly when you don't have a complex flooding situation, but everybody flooding because they're close to the river. That's a relatively easy thing to do. It's a mandatory step, just like elevation certificates. It's something you have to do. It's not optional. But I wouldn't let that keep you out.
Can you tell us what the prerequisites are? I mean, there's nobody to do that right now in the village of Owego. Nobody.
But yet we are having people offer to help us. And once again, without any real numbers, without any real information, simply because we don't have something currently, we're willing to give up in the future having that. That makes absolutely no sense. None.
I just like to say that whether this is eliminated or not, that does not kill CRS entry. It makes it more difficult. It makes it harder to come in at a high level, but the village can still enter CRS.
And lastly, I would just like to say that the money we could save would easily pay back the money we would spend out, especially if we have someone who would do it per diem. And because you can't give a number on what this would cost, once again, there's no information given by the county at all, other than we don't have something and we already know we don't have something.
There has to be a benefit cost analysis done. That was recommended in a webinar I attended. And yeah, and again, there's nobody to even do that.
Well, maybe we can find someone who'd be willing to help us from another community. Thank you.
Guys, this is that important again. I think it does come down to a cost benefit analysis that Elaine has pointed out. And, if we're talking about $600,000 flood insurance premiums being borne by 640 some residents, that's $94 per resident. So I think that this back of the envelope math says that you would have to be able to do this for around that figure, or a savings of that figure, of that $94 per beneficiary.
All right, I think Amanda's connected to us. Let's her do her public comment. Go ahead.
I'm just getting background. Is anyone else here?
Yeah, if you're not speaking, please mute your mic.
Mike, who's Amanda?
She lives on Temple Street.
Okay.
She was messaging me when I talked. So. Do we have any other public comment?
I have just if I can make one suggestion, the members of my county, Monroe County, my town is the only town in the CRS program, and our the county planning department recently obtained a grant from FEMA to explore working together with those communities that are interested, and there's about a half a dozen in Monroe County that are interested in joining CRS. And that's one of the secrets, I think, that many of the other parts of the country do, they work together within a river basin, within a portion of a state. But if you could get a grant to work with other similarly situated communities, just to get started, because that's the hardest thing. And many of the tasks are common tasks that you would share with your neighbors. It's the way that we've approached compliance with the stormwater law here. A group of MS4s have all worked together to take care of some of the more daunting common tasks rather than going it alone. That may be worth exploring, whether you do it under a grant or by self-funding, but by pooling resources to work on it. It's really important in pursuing it to have access to GIS. That is a tool that is very important in both FEMA and the CRS program. I don't know of a community that's advanced in CRS that doesn't have the GIS capability. It's just something to have in mind, I think, when you look at it, because if you could work together with other communities nearby, they'd have a similar interest. I think you could save a tremendous amount of money.
Do we have GIS capability in the village?
I think we did play with them.
We do not, but the county has excellent GIS capacity and has worked closely with the village and other municipalities in the past. They're very user friendly.
All right, do we have any other public comment?
Well, we have these maps, they're these like screen grabs that we have on the table, and they're about the risk, they're like these new maps from the risk 2.0 thing coming out. So could Julie or somebody on there talk about the changes that we're going to see with the new maps a little bit?
I think John might be the best qualified to, or John or Rick, because risk rating 2.0 is a relatively unknown entity as far as I can tell to date.
I think, we've got general frameworks involved, but I don't believe it's been completely developed in their guidance yet. That's my understanding. Rick, do you have any more information than what's been shared with us at the association? Rick.
You have to unmute, Rick.
There we go. Yeah, John, I think it's still kind of in the development phase, and I don't know a heck of a lot about the changes, but I think Janet Thigpen, that's involved with our organization statewide, she has been very involved and is very knowledgeable. So I think Julie's been in touch with her a little bit, and she's a good resource to get the latest on risk 2.0.
The basic way the current rating works is it classifies your building as a type, and it runs off of what the elevation of the first element in your building that gets damaged, and compares that to what the base flood elevation is, and it's more or less a one-dimensional analysis. 2.0 has been advertised as something that will be more fine-tuned, so that it's a difference between going into an on-off binary kind of a setup into a curvilinear curve And they're saying that it's just going to fine tune the actual damage based more specifically on your locale. It's not in and of itself intended to charge more or less, just to be more of a continuum rather than a binary on-off. And it sounds mysterious and strange, and that's kind of where it is. And I think we'll know a lot more about it on October 1st. But it's still best to try to save money if we can, and not overpay for insurance.
I wasn't aware. Sorry, I wasn't aware that. Sorry, I wasn't aware that there were new maps being produced. I mean, we just had our whole county remapped. So, is there going to be new maps, new firm panels, or is it just okay?
No, it won't be a new map just for 2.0. If you've been recently mapped, you're mapped. You're all set. 2.0 is going to work with the maps.
Right. Thanks.
So I called a flood expert person. Well, I emailed him last week, and I had a phone chat with him today. And what he said is that the way 2.0 is going to work, as opposed to 1.0, is that you start out clean. You start with no load on the rate. But as soon as you file your first claim under 2.0, then they can go backwards and they can calculate prior claims from a 20-year window. And you will get a risk rating loaded onto your flood insurance rate based on your prior rate. And it said you will be classified as severe repetitive losses if you have 4 claims of $5,000 or more with 2 claims inside of a 10-year period, and the look back period is 20 years. So basically you start clean, and then if something happens, they can go back. The other thing he said that's a good thing about 2.0 is that if you get, say, your heating system and your electric panel out of your basement, but still keep your basement, you will get more credit for that. Whereas before, you had to actually fill in your basement and get rid of your basement. So he said that will be a good thing, that you will get more credit for mitigating a property. But if you have repeated flooding, which we have in the village, it can be bad. And it's going to be more based on the replacement value of the house. So that's the only additional things that I learned.
All right, do we have any more public comment? All right, so we'll close public comment. Now we're going to go to the regular board meeting.
Mike, may I speak for a second?
It'll just be the board. We have a couple of presentations tonight.
Yep. I just want to say something.
Okay.
Of course, we want to thank everybody for being involved in this, but especially want to thank the gentlemen that don't live in our community that were willing to talk and help us. That's John and Rick. Thank you very much for coming on today and sharing things with us.
Yes, thank you.
So the first thing on our regular agenda is Todd. He's been patiently waiting from Cornell Cooperative Extension. To make him the presenter, he's got a presentation for us on the Clean Energy Communities Program through NYSERDA.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to come to your board meeting tonight and speak. As Mayor said, my name is Todd Nobby, and I am from the Cornell Cooperative Extension, where I am an energy resource educator. And as my role here at the Cooperative Extension, I help administer the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority's Clean Energy Communities Program. and I'll be talking about that program and the competitive grants that are available for the village. So the Clean Energy Communities Program, as I mentioned, is a competitive grant program for local governments that's housed in the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. This program was launched earlier this year at the end of January 2021, and its goal is to encourage communities within New York State to implement clean energy actions, save energy costs, create jobs locally, and help improve the environment. And by participating in our program, the Clean Energy Communities Program, they recognize and reward leadership for communities that complete different clean energy projects in our program. So the Clean Energy Communities Program has multiple benefits for communities that participate. One of the main motivators to participate is we have over $800,000 earmarked for Southern Tier communities to tap into through participation in our program. By participating in our program, we have a series of actions that I'll talk about later, but all these actions are designed to help a community save energy and the operational costs associated with it, help streamline energy policies, and to help with community investment. An example I like to show is this picture right here of streetlights. This is outside of Syracuse, New York, where streetlights have been converted on one side of this highway to LEDs, and on the other side, they are your standard high pressure sodium streetlights. They're using more energy and costing more during their life cycle. And then, aside with helping reduce energy use and costs and awarding communities grant money, we also provide statewide recognition where we highlight communities in newsletters and press releasings that are seen throughout the state. Our community and our program also offers free technical assistance to help your community move forward in our program. So let's kind of dive into what some of these program actions and grant funding opportunities are. So the focal point of our program is completing these actions called high impact actions. These are the actions that help streamline energy policies in your community, reduce energy costs, and save on operational costs. We have about 14 main actions. Each one of these have subcomponents to a varying degree. For a community that's participating, they just need to complete, as they complete these actions, they'll accumulate points. Points will be accumulated and then used to receive grant money. We have, actions that cover just from passing resolutions to use permits to help residentials and small commercial businesses readily adopt solar, to actions that revolve around upgrading your streetlights to LEDs, and to actions around actions that involve, updating your energy code to make it more stringent than the state's baseline energy code. We have 3 ways in our program that your community can receive funding. The first way is through what are called designation grants, where it's just completing 4 high impact actions, any 4 of those actions I showed on the previous slide. The other way is through point-based grants, where by completing actions, you collect points and then you cash those points in for grant money. And then we have these actions called action grants, where there are certain actions that when completed will allow your community to become eligible for grant funding. So looking into designation grants a little bit further. So as I mentioned, it's completing any 4 of the high impact actions. When 4 actions are completed, you're awarded a one-time grant of $5,000. This grant is does not that's a typo right here in my slide. It does not require you to enter into a contract with NYSERDA. All we have to do is fill out a short grant application form and send that on how the money is intended to be used, and NYSERDA will send you a check back in the sum of $5,000 to help implement those projects. These are just 4 common actions that communities typically pursue when they first start off: the Unified Solar Permit, benchmarking, sending their code enforcement official to training, and embracing clean energy upgrades and reducing their greenhouse gas footprint across municipal buildings by 10%. Moving on to our point-based grants. So point-based grants are first come, first serve. Since we fall under the category of a small municipality, we are only competing for grants that are earmarked specifically for the Southern Tier, which I mentioned is over $800,000. As we complete actions and accumulate points, we can get to these different point thresholds at 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000 points. As we move forward, when we get to 3,000 points, we will become eligible for a $10,000 grant. These are competitive, so there is a limited number. So at this first threshold, there's only 40 grants for the Southern Tier at $10,000. As you move forward to 4,000 points, you'll become eligible for a $20,000 grant, where there are 10 grants available. And if you're able to make it to the 5,000 point threshold, you'll be eligible for a $70,000 grant. And there are 4 earmarked for the Southern Tier. Now, all these grants require a community to enter into a contract with NYSERDA to implement a clean energy project in their community. We have our action grants, so the New York Stretch Energy Code and an action called Community Campaigns. These are also competitive grants. These action grants are statewide grants, so they're not earmarked for a specific region within the state. The New York Stretch Energy Code is just adopting a more stringent energy code for your community for new construction and major renovations. By adopting this local law, you could bring in a $5,000 grant, and there are 100 of these grants statewide. Community campaigns is just helping promote campaigns in your community, such as promoting residential community solar, working with communities to adopt, with residents to adopt EVs, or embrace state incentives to help them with weatherizing and clean heating, and adopting clean heating and cooling technologies. And the same goes for this too. So if you complete one of these campaigns, you'll be eligible for a $5,000 grant, and there are 100 grants statewide. And there are 4 community campaigns that can be completed. So if you were to complete all 4 of them, you could bring in $20,000 through that one action. So let's take a look at the village's status in our program. So currently, the village has not been participating in our program in the past. This does not mean that they have not completed any actions to receive them credit. And we're going to move on and talk about what that means. So our program rewards communities retroactively for actions that they've done to help lower their energy use and their greenhouse gas emissions. To my knowledge, the village has currently done 3 actions. Their residents are currently in a contract with Mega and Constellation for 100% renewable community choice aggregation. By just doing this one action alone, they're already bringing in 1,500 points to their community. The village has also converted both their Cobra Head style streetlights and their decorative style streetlights over to LEDs. This is an additional 900 points for doing these 2 actions, putting the community, only one action away from bringing in a $5,000 designation grant. But this accumulates to 2,400 points. So you're just 600 points away from bringing in a $10,000 grant, which can easily be done by completing 1 or 2 more actions. So, looking forward and developing a strategy to help kind of guide the next steps. Establishing a goal of bringing in this $5,000 designation grant is pretty easy and can be done very quickly once we get all the documentation submitted. And then we can work towards bringing in a $10,000 point-based grant. As I mentioned, between your LED streetlights and the community choice aggregation that you're in, you have 2,400 points. We could look at a few other actions such as benchmarking, where all you do is track and record energy use for municipal buildings, and the Unified Solar Permit, which is just adopting the New York State Unified Solar Permit to help streamline residential and small commercial solar installations for under 25 kilowatts. So just by, adding on benchmarking unified solar permit, we're sitting at 2,900 points, just 100 points away from that $10,000 grant. And these are just 3 of the many possible actions that the village can consider. One from a simple, just waiting till this fall to send your code enforcement officer off to training, that bring in an additional 200 points. To looking at ways how the village can reduce their greenhouse gas footprint just for their buildings by 10%. In some cases, this can easily be done by upgrading your interior lights to LEDs or putting municipal electricity accounts on subscription solar, or entering into a power purchase agreement for 100% renewable energy. Or through our Clean Fleets action, which has multiple components, such as installing electric vehicles charging stations that are owned and operated by the government, working to electrify your fleet by bringing on a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle or a full battery electric vehicle, or upgrading a heavy-duty vehicle to a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle. And any one of these actions would put us over this threshold and bring in a $10,000 grant. And to be honest, just getting to this first threshold of 3,000 points, that's the hard work. It's much easier to go from 3,000 to 4,000 than from 1,500 to 3,000 or 0 to 3,000. And most communities won't get this far or be able to go as far as the village. So just looking at the next steps, one thing we can do is start a conversation about what actions that the community has done and they can receive retroactive credit for, looking at what actions that would be aligned with the village's goals and interests. Designate a main contact that would work with me to help make sure that all documentation is getting submitted to NYSERDA so that the village can receive credit within our program. And continuing, just to kind of track what we're doing and submitting this documentation to NYSERDA, and identifying how this grant money, how your village would like to put this grant money back into their community through building upgrades, etc. So here's my contact information. You can, tk656@cornell.edu is my email address. This is my office phone down here at the bottom. My extension is 3225. So if you have any questions, please contact me. I'll be happy to answer them for you. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Could you email your presentation to the board members?
Yes, I can. Who would be the best person to?
It's hard.
You can send it to me, Todd, and I'll send it out.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'll do that when I'm down here then.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for Todd?
So with our new municipal building, will some of the things in that qualify
Possibly.
towards the points?
Possibly.
Is that for a newly built municipal building? Has it been constructed yet?
It's in the process.
We're building it.
Yeah, we could look at, depending on what is being incorporated into it, like what is the building? Do you know, for example, like what the building's heating system is?
Firehouse.
We'll probably have to look into that and get back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that we can sit down and have a discussion over and kind of just see, what components of it would count towards our program.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Todd? Todd, thanks for the presentation.
Yep, thank you. And thank you once again for everyone's time tonight and allowing me to speak to you all.
Thanks for hanging in there
for us. Call Jerry Wiley.
What's that?
We got to call Jerry.
Yeah, well, Jerry's the one to hook us up with Todd.
Yeah.
So she approves of Todd highly. So it sounds like we're really close to getting at least a $5,000 grant. We're going to do maybe one or two other things.
We've certainly spoken about this in the past,
Yeah.
but not this detail of that.
Yeah, Kevin raising his hand there.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think all of the inside lights were converted to LEDs a while ago. Rodney would probably know that best.
Yes, we might actually be there.
We've done that fire station.
Yeah, we might even be there already.
Give us some money, let's go.
Make it rain.
So I guess, Todd, did you get a hold of the clerk's office, Cindy and Kim?
I did send an email to them on Friday. So I'm just awaiting a response. I was gonna follow up, probably tomorrow, Wednesday, if I've not heard back.
Well, I'll have Rob get all that too.
Okay,
All right, thanks, Todd.
thank you once again.
All right, next item on the agenda, continue discussion on local law number 1, which is amending chapter 117 entitled flood damage prevention. Just a reminder, this is just for the board. Obviously, if we have specific questions for other people online, the board can ask those people.
So I met with Julie, who's on the screen, and Kevin, who's on the screen, and Jason Fenn, who's our region's FEMA coordinator. And he just went over questions that we had about our status and stuff. And so there's some information that everybody was emailed through Mike last Friday, and then I followed up with some more today. That's sort of our how to price us. So there's some papers that have the villages, just how they went through the NYSERDA process and the goals. There's this class that has the CRS class limits, and getting into it, we already have something that our community does where we wouldn't be jumping in at the lowest bid. But we would have to work up to getting a higher level. So reaching 5% wouldn't be out of the ordinary, but one of the members on there is the town of Greece. They've been working at it 30 years, and now they're up to 25% savings for their community, which is significant for homeowners. I personally struggle paying my taxes and home and flood insurance and stuff, and so going up is concerning for me at home, and then also for the business, right? For me at home, I have to keep flood insurance. For the business, I have to not pay for it, and that's just a choice I have to make because of financially for me. But for our community, I want us to fight to lower it for ourselves, with what we pay in our budget, and for every single homeowner that we have, our property owner, that we're gonna fight to lower their costs. Even at 5% going forward, because we're a repetitive loss community, and we know it's gonna go up for us. Because they're gonna balance it on the new equation. Is this algorithm that says, okay, what's your property worth to replace? How many times has your property actually been flooded in this 20-year span, right? And we know that we got flooded heavily in 2006, 2011. If we get something large, all that slams right against us. And we have examples of local building that we've seen. So in my lifetime, I'm 41 years old. There was the Price Chopper Plaza built in our floodplain, right? And there was houses that I remember, they're gone now, right? In the you see on like Facebook Memories of Owego, people posting pictures of like the houses that were there. A little bit upstream of where the plaza now sits, right? So all the buildings closer to Marvin Park, the Vision Street houses, the Main Street houses, those are all gone with the removals after like the 2005 and 2006 floods. After that plaza was built, and that plaza was built on Dory's George Law. So they didn't have an elevation of what that landfill did to the surrounding neighborhood. But I'll tell you that it did. You know, Academy Street, it all floods, you know, hardcore. And so we're talking about a project on Liberty Street, Temple Street, where they're gonna take down like 7 or 8 properties and fill in a significant amount. It's gonna build 1 block's worth. Like that surrounding community where people live in our small town, it's gonna flood them. Without a doubt, you know. And I don't like the idea of putting like Section 8 housing in a flood zone and flooding the neighborhood next to it.
Well, so I will caution, when we're talking about this local law, we're not talking about a project. We're talking about a local law that affects everything that we do in the village. Not
Right.
a housing project, not our building 2 blocks from here, not. It's everything. It's the law for the village. Anyway, any project that goes on the village.
Right. So if there was, say, a project to do that in our community in that area, and it took up that amount of dirt, fill to do, I'm not comfortable with that idea. Pushing that water on our community neighbors. That's without the flood rating program. That's just this law, like removing this law paragraph. That's not okay with me, you know? If there was a compromise on building, like I'm pro sustainable economic improvement for our buildings in our community, but I want to be smart where they take their building plan and put it through the flood variant application if they need to for their land project. So the elementary school project, I think it wasn't just the athletics fields that they had to alter, but also with the adjacent properties, they did something with some land in Candor or some fill that they deposited. The fill, I don't know, it was within the emails that got forwarded. But I don't know, I feel like from these maps and stuff, I'm not comfortable touching water on ourselves. The people that say that getting into the CRS is like a 1,001 chance, they're like salaried employees of the village and of the county who have to work on these projects, right? And go sit through the long meetings of the zoning, planning board. They actively seek out what properties could be built on for builders. And Jeff's job is so hard without code enforcement right now. And for us to be talking about entering into this huge program, like we have to really invest in ourselves to get code enforcement position filled. We gotta get, we just have somebody that has the flood mitigation experience for our community, because we flood all the time, right? Or so much of us is in the flood zone. And I think we gotta get serious about protecting ourselves and lowering our costs, but we have to support Jeff to do that. If we're gonna get into this program, there's a lot of paperwork, things that we have to do that's worthwhile. And I think it's hard work that we have to just do to protect ourselves. in our community. Just, I don't like that idea that we're gonna change our law for some potential builder that like, is gonna ask for a pilot and reduction of taxes when, and then they're also gonna tell us that they're gonna increase our tax base. I wanna protect who's here, and have them build smarter. Like I can see, development happening right now with the DRI, right? There's projects, all the projects are developing in our floodplain, right? And they're just making wiser uses about where they're locating their their building stuff for their rates. And they have to because they're building new stuff, right? New building has to follow new code about where they're putting all their stuff. But all the projects are in existing, land buildings and stuff like that, right? But we see development happen. And I'm pro smart development. I think if somebody wants to build a unit somewhere, they ought to go through the harder process of demonstrating to us that they're not gonna flood next year. So anyway, that's how I just started, is that I had that conversation with Iman, and we did have Julie help us work on fulfilling our violations that our code, or that our village has, just in the plain old national floodplain insurance. Just that we have some paperwork that we still have to file, just for, normal stuff before we can venture into this program, but we're well on our way. Julie can help fulfill that in months' time. So anyway.
I think we need to decide if we're gonna be serious about this flood mitigation program. And if we are, then we need to make steps, get people in charge and working on it. Not just talking around it. I mean, we've been, it's been kind of hanging out for a couple of years now. Stalemated.
Well, we've also been through 3 code enforcement officers in the last 4 years, so it doesn't help.
Yeah, no, that doesn't help either, but I mean, we've just been nibbling at the edges and not being serious about it.
So if they're going in order, my feelings on it would be that we follow what the gentleman from FEMA and the BEC say, and we take out the paragraph, because as he explains in his email, the compensatory storage is just a means to an end. And you still have to follow all the other flood laws, and there could be other ways to approach this to make sure that we don't flood your neighbors. As far as, requiring studies or whatever. And in bold in his email, he says, FEMA under Title 44 Code of Federal Regulations and under State Building Code do not accept variances with respect to flood damage prevention. So the variance process is not really a thing. And it doesn't exclude us from joining CRS. It just may get us less points, but there's other ways to get those points. That's my personal feel of it.
I hear all the voices of our people in our community who are concerned with this. We've been through 2 large, major floods. I've seen the devastation firsthand. I've seen, even after those floods, blood pressure rise just like the river every time there's a threat of more flooding. I can't see having new people coming from outside the build to flood areas that are already prone to flooding. Just looking at the map, there's no place for the water to go. The river rises, water comes into the village. We can't just make it worse, if there is a worse. Um, That's my opinion. I've heard the people. I'd rather err on the side of the people who are affected. I mean, looking at the map where I'm located, I'm fortunate enough to be above the flood zone in that small gray area there. And as the mayor knows, we held down that little parcel of land that was dry and took care of the surrounding people around us. We were actually stuck in town when everybody else was able to escape. And that doesn't mean that we weren't affected emotionally by seeing all the devastation around us. Not once, not twice, even more times than that. So if there's anything we can do to avoid the inevitable or not make it worse, I'm with that.
Keep hearing talk about project. And I don't know where the information comes from. Section 8, I hear thrown around a lot. I think this is all speculation, but that has nothing to do with this. This is my problem with this is it affects every single homeowner because if my house floods and it's destroyed, I cannot rebuild on my own property by this law.
That's true.
I mean, one of the emails that was sent said elevation isn't the only way to elevate a building. However, someone wants to avoid mandatory flood insurance requirements. Filling a site and then applying for FEMA for a letter of map revision is the only way to remove yourself from that. So why would you rebuild your house just to be put right back into a floodplain? I think it really hurts the people we're trying to protect that we all say we're trying to protect. I don't care if a project comes in. I'm worried about your house and their houses. I don't care if that project hits Liberty Street. I don't care if it's Section 8 or $1 million house. I'm worried about people who are here, and this law right now hurts us. That is my biggest issue with this. And I did a little bit of research into that risk rating 2.0. I mean, they sent the information out to everybody. I don't know if you looked at it or not, but current policyholders with lower value homes are paying more than their fair share of risk, where policyholders with higher value homes are paying less than their fair share because risk rating 2.0 considers rebuilding cost. FEMA can equitably distribute premiums across all policyholders based on home value and property's unique flood risk. I'm paying an extreme amount of money for a house that's worth $70,000. I'm paying $2,700 a year. It's ridiculous. So, like I said, I don't care about this project. I'm worried about my house the next flood that comes in. I want to be able to rebuild because I love this area. And if I can't rebuild, I can't stay. And that's where I'm at with this. I'm done.
Mr. Mayor,
Rusty?
we, in this, what's that now? Is there a time limit? Half an hour, how long do I have?
As long as you want, we're here all night.
Yeah.
I gotta work.
One of the things we're doing is we're taking a couple of things and blending them together. I think that the village hasn't been very proactive and hasn't done much about CRS for a long time. Some people have. Kevin certainly has been involved in it, and others for a long time. But we haven't, for example, fixing those violations, et cetera, et cetera. I think that the feeling of this village board would be that we are very interested in our citizens, their flood insurance rates, and going forward and soon and significantly in doing the things we need to do to get into CRS and to improve in that. But we seem to have tied that to this particular paragraph in this particular law, as if we do this, we're not serious. If we do this, FEMA won't like us. If we do this, people that have been working on it think we don't support them and don't want to work on it anymore. If we do this, we will lose points and we will be going backwards. I don't necessarily put those two things directly together like that. If this is just a piece of it, back to the point part, which is what we asked about last time, subjectivity, objectivity, points. If we lose some points by doing this, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do 10 other good things to try and get where we need to get. We just don't have those points at that time in that way. That's not to say whether we should do it or not. It's back to that, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it cost analysis idea? All that stuff goes into it. But it's not just, if you do this, you're rejecting it and you don't want it. No, this is a particular piece of it. And it has good and bad parts to it. Ron's part about the individual is a good piece. So anyway, I just want people to stop saying that the village is not, we haven't taken it very seriously. I think we are going to be taking it very seriously now. I think whether we do this law or not, or whether we change this, we're going to be taking it seriously. We're going to be attempting to get in as fast and as far as we can. Just don't want everybody to be discouraged if we just do that one thing. Oh my God, it's going to fall to pieces and no one cares about anybody. That's not the case. Where's that?
That's online. Have you got anything?
Yeah, so my thoughts on the subject are the cost benefit analysis is what I keep coming back to. So, Elaine raised that issue and I think, we don't have our arms around what the cost would be to be able to get into the CRS program. So I don't know that it makes sense for us to be worried about spending, potentially our entire village budget to get into the CRS program in order to save $94 per flood insurance policy. If your taxes go up $1,000 and you save $94 on your insurance, that's not a good deal. I also agree with Rusty that we've conflated these two things and they're not necessarily linked. So those are my thoughts. And the canard about this being driven by a particular project, I think is not correct. This was something that was brought to us by Jeff Souls because it was brought to him, not because we're looking to approve or disapprove a certain project. So those are my thoughts.
I see Rusty's point about it hinging on certain people's involvement, that we actively have been having meetings with, Julie as our representative to work to get into the CRS system. Just within our last, during COVID, Mike and I and Jeff and Elaine and all these people, we've been sitting in meetings working towards getting into the CRS programs. It's not like we're not doing it. And these are community members who are actively involved. If you take away, if you tell them now that you're going to change, just eliminate this law, why would they work with us anymore? But definitely, with their free time and all these years to do this. I do believe it does hinge on our community members' involvement.
Well, I would agree with Rusty and Ed by saying, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a slap in the face to them because we're still working towards CRS. This doesn't, and it's not like we're eliminating the whole flood law. We're just eliminating this one paragraph. And if we did that, it doesn't disallow us to join CRS. We can still work toward that goal, and I think we still would.
So some of the communication that we received to look at was some suggestions about how instead of just removing the paragraph, that we could make modifications for that paragraph that would allow for smart building of smaller properties. So when we're having each of our properties raise like their lowest service thing that the gentleman talked about, like where your gas comes in or where your electric comes in is where they measure where your level is instead of like where your base flood of your first floor is, right? And so in doing that, some people aren't going to be able to afford, elevations or to do like the raising the floor of their basement, but they would potentially be able to do some service relocation, just so that they could, get their release, their homeowners and stuff. I think $94 a month per homeowner in our community is significant, right? To me. But I would like if we could hear a little bit more from Julie, who we as a board hired to get into the CRS.
We didn't hire her.
Or not hire, but like we.
But what effect? What are you looking for that she hasn't given us already?
Julie's gone anyway.
So she's been very repetitive on the way she feels and stuff. I'm just wondering if there's some new information that you're aware of that we are not, that she would bring forward.
Well, there was details, like the email that we got from the FEMA coordinator that you read some quotes from. It wasn't that, it was more of a warning that in some of the parts about that we should remember that just because we remove that compensatory storage clause, that there's a lot of things that still exist that means those projects wouldn't go forward.
Right.
Not that they can apply for a variance and those jobs can go forward if we remove it or not. Or we can do these tweaks and then have those things go forward in the floodplain.
I wouldn't tie this to those projects. I would say that we're removing this because it's recommended by Jason Fenn from FEMA and I forget who, somebody from DEC came to Jeff and said to remove this stuff.
They've listed alternatives for how we can assist individual and smaller projects to still go forward within looking through our specific stuff.
So
our current laws.
Like Ron says, right now, if I want to build a garage, I can't do it. I got to dig a big hole somewhere.
According to the standards, if you increase the value of your home by 50%, you have to adhere to new construction standards.
Right.
It's not true though, because
I read it on the FEMA and DEC websites.
we have an example of homes, like Julie's house was raised.
And she specifically said in the emails that she didn't follow this paragraph of the law. That we have examples.
Went through the process about
That we have examples where it was enforced.
or it didn't have to move the land.
We have examples where it was enforced, like example, the elementary school. And we have examples where it wasn't enforced, Julie's house, every other house that got raised. So do we even, why is it even in there? Do we enforce it or not? We enforce it when we want to, we don't when we don't want to.
I think you have to very carefully read the language because she went through that process very carefully and getting refunded from the state for all the money that they did. They know exactly how much land they brought in from their contractors to raise the bedding and to the new level of the grade of the landscaping and stuff that they brought in. They had to go through the process of seeing like how much land they have in their backyard and offer to remove it from their backyard to put it into the front of their house. Like there's no not following the rules that they did in this project for the land that was displaced on their own property there.
Yeah, and I know Julie's email said that she was willing to take it from her backyard and put it under her house, but they told her she shouldn't have to.
Because her property wasn't significant enough to displace actual land and just
So,
doing that landscape.
it's
It
really
doesn't
none of
mean
my
that these
business.
projects aren't gonna go through or are currently happening.
I'd be curious.
Go ahead.
I'd be curious whether she's still considered to be in the flood risk. Like, I raise my house up, I get the dirt, I can do that, I can then apply to be out of the flood zone. Raising your house, was she able to do that? Or was that an expense to just still be in the flood zone and still have to carry insurance at a lower rate?
So like, if she's off, but she pays like $400.
Which
a
she
year
does
for
pay,
it,
so she's still in the flood zone. That
because
is
she
my
has
question.
evidentiary elevation stuff that she sent in that shows that she's up out of there. Now she doesn't have that, like she's set at $400
Right.
out of the zone. Like even though the house is in the flood plain, she's out of it. Just like there's spots in here.
But I don't have the same luxury of displacing land in my little lot. And I'm not the only person in the village who's stuck in this conundrum.
Right, you're probably not significantly displacing land.
If I have to raise my house up another 2 feet, I am. If I fill in my basement, I'm displacing about 10,000 gallons of water, but yet I'm told to fill my basement in to save money on my flood insurance. That's contradictory to what they want us to do. I don't understand all these different dynamics to this.
Rusty's had his hand up. Probably losing.
Just wait. That's what we do. We don't interrupt. We wait our turn.
That's what I do. Sorry, Rusty.
So one of the things that I don't want to talk to Nate about this right now, but one of the things that strikes me is some advice from our attorney on a number of things. So if we take this paragraph out, what type of control will we have? And we keep talking in generalities, but what type of control will we have over some larger projects that might do some significant displacement? What other methodologies do we have for that? I'd be interested to know that. I'd be interested to know if we take this paragraph out and replace it with something that John or Rick had mentioned, something that was in between restrictives that gave us the ability for smaller things to be done, but not larger things without more oversight. So those are the couple of things that I would be asking about laws and rules and what are our options on those kinds of things.
Nate's on, President.
I wasn't asking him.
I would have the same question. So.
Yeah.
It's too bad nobody's asking me the question then, or?
Yes, exactly.
You can say,
you know our style.
I'm asking you Rusty's questions.
Yeah, so if this paragraph was removed from your flood damage prevention law, then I think has kind of been discussed, right? A homeowner isn't, at least looking at your local law, a homeowner would not be required to also provide compensatory excavation on their lot. And so the only other ways that your village oversees and controls local land use, right, is through your zoning code, typically, and the seeker process and site plan review. And so any parcels where site plan is required would trigger an opportunity for the village to really drill down into the question of what effect construction in this parcel has on neighboring properties. A single family home isn't typically subject to site plan review, and so would escape that type of hard look at the impacts to neighboring properties as a result of construction. You know, and I mean, we'd have to go through your code just to see what else is subject to site plan review and where to understand kind of that impact. But I'm assuming, and Jeff isn't the code enforcement officer, so he probably doesn't know this, but I'm assuming the property, and this is not about a specific property, right? But this proposal for a project on wherever it is, sounds like it's big enough that it's likely going to require site plan review. And so even if this excavation requirement was taken out of the local law, you through site plan could say to the applicant, you still have to dig because we believe your project is likely to displace, you know, onto neighboring parcels a significant amount of water. And so, you know, either dig the appropriate depth to hydraulically compensate for that, or provide us clear engineering reports and studies showing that won't be the case. So I mean, for big projects like that, there's a mechanism to still achieve the protections that this paragraph affords, but it does leave sort of this gap in projects where if there's no local review somewhere else, then they would just go through.
So Nate, just for further clarification, that kind of what I'm hearing you say is that kind of means that for the individual homeowner that Ron is alluding to, you likely wouldn't have any issues with the change in the law because it's not going to require a site plan review.
Yeah, it wouldn't trigger that opportunity there. I'll admit I'm not fully versed in the flood damage prevention law specifically to say that there isn't any other trip up in there for like a residential home construction, but generally I think, Ed, yes, you've restated what I'd indicated correctly.
So, do we have more? Yeah, we kind of do in its own way. I'm always putting things off and wanting more and more and more, but do we have more research to do and find out any more details of our code and the way this works and what our protections and options are, or is that not something that we need?
Personally, I don't know how much more research I can do.
Yeah.
I would like us to look into the other alternatives for language that instead of just removing the law, looking to modifications of it to allow for some projects to go through, just noting what our land looks like. That's, it can't be a compensatory store anymore. But just so that, that it triggers more oversight, or that we can just find sort of a compromise instead of removing it fully, that we still have some more control and that we show good faith to people who are working to get us in, that encourage them to continue working to get us into the CRS.
What are these issues related to planning and zoning? I mean, as far as homeowner projects or other commercial buildings or whatever, it all has to go through planning and zoning anyways, right?
Okay, but those are like 8 people who volunteer on boards, and we probably ought to dictate oversight over our village about what we want to see for development in our village and our flood policy, not just 8 citizens of our zoning and planning committee.
So I did try to speak to that concept of the appreciation we have for the people that are working on CRS and have been doing it forever and ever, as opposed to the idea that we can't take any steps whatsoever because they might not like it or they might think that we're not supporting them. I already addressed that thought process. I don't say whether I say it's right or wrong or this or that, but I don't sign up to that thought process that we can do 15 things for CRS over here, but if we do one over here that doesn't look like it is, or that somebody doesn't agree with, that suddenly we're not supportive. I don't sign up for that. That's not for me. Anyway, so if we keep it, we'll have the continued problem with the small guy, and we probably, as Jeff has alluded to, Jeff Souls, we probably will squelch any development ever because it's maybe overly stringent. Now, maybe and sometimes it is, maybe sometimes it isn't. If we get rid of it or get rid of it and consider, before we get rid of it, putting in something else, or after we get rid of it, adding something else. We still have methodologies to stop something we think is bad and abusive. We have other methodologies and ways to do that, seeker and other ways. So we haven't given up all that control, but we have actually opened it up so that if we actually see one that we like and we think it's a good one, we won't have stopped that particular project because this law stops everything that can't be conservatory filled. With all that, it would seem like the play would be to get rid of it. The downside is the loss of the points, making people angry. We're hopefully that won't change the flood insurance stuff. If it turned out we made a terrible mistake and it just blew everything to pieces, we could put it back. If it turns out that we just messed the heck out of it. So it seemed like the logic would be to get rid of it. We'll be covered otherwise. Maybe look at adding something if somebody wants to do some more work and add something that's in between restrictive. It seemed to be the logic. I don't know.
So you're making a motion?
I am now.
Well, so the motion is on it was tabled, right? So
It was.
so the next step would be, if we're done discussing it, would be call for a vote, right?
We're going to need to untable the motion and do something about it.
Okay, all right. So I'll make the motion to untable the motion.
Previous.
Okay.
So
it was to pass the local law, which would remove the paragraph, correct?
Yes.
So we're bringing it back to the board. When we untable it, we're bringing it back to the board. I'll second the untabling if that's the correct. Am I doing that right there, Nathan?
Yep.
I'm second to untable the motion because we have to take some action on it or do something. Get rid of it.
Yeah, right. Even if we vote it down, it should be resolved, I think. We spent 2 meetings on this so far. And not that I'm saying that there shouldn't be more time spent on it, but I just think it should be acted on one way or the other.
Vote on the untabling.
Well, Nate, do we have to
vote on the untabling?
Do we have to vote on the untabling, or is it just untabled?
I think the board should vote, so that way, because I believe it was a board vote that tabled it, so you should vote to untable it.
Well, this is just to untable the motion to move forward somewhere. Charles?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Fran?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion now.
So, of course, I'll just gently remind everyone that we'll need to review seeker for this local law adoption prior to you taking action to approve it. If it appears that the board doesn't have the votes to approve it, that the motion would be to deny or just take no action and to not pass it, then we don't need to review seeker.
Do we need a vote to review seeker? Seeker?
No, you don't need to vote to review it, but we do need to review it and have the board vote to.
If we're planning to pass it.
If you're planning to pass it, right.
And we're still in discussion, right, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, I'm just giving my viewpoint. Trying to take this out of this other context and stuff, just this particular thing. It appears we have protections other than this law. It appears if we find out that we don't, we can correct it if that's what we choose to do. It appears that the feel of this village board is to pursue strongly CRS, whether or not we take this paragraph out or not. It appears that this paragraph is problematic for individual homeowners. So I'm planning to vote yes for this law. And I'm going to ask a quick idea from the rest of the trustees what they're planning to do to see if we're going to bother to do the seeker. That's my discussion.
I plan on voting yes.
Yeah, I would support Rusty's points.
I have to agree with those three.
I would vote no. I see, just with the CRI, there's $10,000 in development that fits the current law. For development, that, you don't need to move land for. So I don't see us with this law having, no improvement and way forward in the village. The email and Nate just said that an individual homeowner, working to, lower their own flood insurance values with the project, they're not going to be impacted by the
This law still
this
follows
law
us.
change.
If this is in there, it still affects everybody.
Well, so it looks like we may have the potential to pass it. So we probably should go through the secret. I think that was the only thing we were trying to figure out. Right, there's a potential here that we could be for, could be whatever. We probably should go through this 50-page secret.
Oh, this is the, I see this as the IRS short form. Do we have the long form seeker, please?
Right here, it's right here.
No, that, I have that one. That's that's a short one. Nate, did you bring the 400-page long seeker form with you?
I mean, I've got it open in front of me. I think you do, right?
Do I need to fill it out, Nate, or you're gonna do it?
Well, I would actually, because you would, if the board approves a negative declaration for the seeker, Mayor, you'll need to sign part 3 of the form. So if you would fill it out as the board answers the questions in part 2.
Okay, part 2.
Can I ask a question to Nate?
Yeah.
So we, from seekers we've done before, when we do the seeker, if a board member, do these all need to be unanimous votes? What if one board member votes in a particular way on the seeker? Does that stop this whole thing?
No, so I think the way we've done it in the past would be like question 1, impact on land. So proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site. Kind of yes. If everybody's in agreement that it's a no, then you don't need to do the subparts and we'll move on to question 2. If somebody says, I think that we need to go through this, I think we've erred on the side of going through the subpart questions individually at that point. But if ultimately,
when we get all done with it, on these secret things, if there's just one objector, does it fail, or does it have to be a majority of objectors to make it fail?
Just a typical majority requirement.
Okay. I just didn't want to start it if one person could stop it. That'd be a waste of time. Okay.
All right, let's start up, Nate.
Well, so first question is what it is, right? Impact on land. Proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site. Is everyone in agreement as to yes or no on this?
Where are we on the page?
So this is page 1 of the part 2 form.
Page 1 of part 2.
Thank you.
I'll find that.
You guys have a packet or something with that?
Yeah, we have to do 1.
Give an extra copy.
Get a copy machine.
Impact on land, number 1, page 1 of 10 on part 2, impact on land.
Correct, yep.
I got Ron looking at one with me. And we will maintain our 6 inches of separation.
You can share with each other.
I just looks like I can't see it.
They're gonna read it, right?
Now listen.
So it's the same thing, it's a different thing.
There is no proposed site.
That's for the focus on.
You have a copy machine?
No copy machine.
I need to pull it up online.
Okay, but these are a little bit.
Yeah, this is just the blank part 2 form. So Laura, if you looked at it online, it's exactly the same thing I'm looking through. Do you want me to email you a link to it?
Yeah.
Can you do that for me also? please?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, that was Charlie, right?
Yes.
Yep. Mayor, you have yours in front of you, or do you need?
I didn't think to bring extra copies.
I just emailed it, Charlie and Laura. Fran, did you also need it emailed?
No.
The Luddites win.
First time we're together, we forget things like copies of stuff.
The Luddites with file cabinets full of crap win.
That'll fill a year or so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Yep. So first question, page 1 of 10, impact on land. Does anyone think that this will have an impact on, or that this will may involve construction on, physical alteration of a land surface of a proposed site?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there no actually a proposed site right now, though, that we're looking at? So how does that work, Nate?
It's the entire village of Owego. The law pertains.
Right, but nothing's proposed at this moment, so I don't know how this works.
Well, the proposed action is passage of a local law. And passage of the local law itself doesn't involve construction. It affects a change in the regulatory scheme of construction. This is typically a more actual physical project type of a question in general, because these other types of action or actual physical construction is too kind of unknown or amorphous right now. That being said, I mean, if some of the trustees think that this is a yes, I'd just recommend going through the sub questions, listening to what they have to say as to the reasoning why they think it's a no or a small impact or a moderate to large impact. And then if there's significant disagreement amongst the board, I think a vote to determine what the board's answer is to that question would be appropriate.
Thank you, Nate.
Do we want to go out of order and get some department heads the heck out of here before we spend a lot of time on this?
Yeah.
Just a thought. They're sitting on machines and at a desk, and Jimmy says he's all right. I'm just asking.
Jeff's kind of got to stay. You got Tracy. Tracy, do you have anything? You need us to?
Yeah, he sent me something.
No, it's
quick.
Yeah, no, I don't want him to.
I only have a couple of quick things, Mayor.
No, Rob, but
what'd you say?
Did you say no, Tracy?
I have a couple of quick things, Mayor.
Okay, go, let's get them done so you can go back to your night.
Okay, the first thing I had was just wanted to give you an update on the force main replacement for the Green Street pump station. Late last week, I received the preliminary drawings and specs, reviewed them. There's a few minor changes that Hunt's making on them. In the next day or two, they're planning on getting that out to you, Mayor, and to Nate for review, and also the DEC. DEC has indicated that it will only take a day or two for review at their end. It's such a minor project, and then as long as neither of you have any issues or any concerns, they're hoping to have it out to bid within 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that's moving along, and pretty quickly, and as we would hope that it would, since we're using a temporary system.
Yeah, a little bit.
The only other thing I had, I would hoping to be able to get permission to purchase a 8-foot snow pusher for my loader. I'd brought this up a couple of board meetings ago, and then I got with a fire chief, was able to get a third quote through his recommendations. But the one quote that I had from Frisbee Welding out of Spencer is still the lowest bid at $6,179. I was hoping to get permission to go ahead with that purchase.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we would approve the purchase of the 8-foot snow mover for $6,179 from Frisbee Welding. As we need to do this soon, so that delivery will be here hopefully before the first snowfall. They said it's quite a ways out.
Next week.
The snow or the pusher?
Well, the
Snow's coming next week.
I'll
But I mean,
second that.
This air conditioning this week, snow next week. Any discussion on the snow pusher? Sounds like a cool thing. And we'll vote on that, Charles,
Yes.
Ron,
yes,
Rusty,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes. Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and yes.
That it, Trace?
That's all I have unless somebody has something for me.
thank you, Tracy.
And I appreciate you letting me jump in out of order so I can get back to my family this evening.
Yeah, no, sorry to keep you this late.
Who else we got?
East.
Let's see, we don't have Robin. Jimmy, did you want to go or do you want to wait?
Yeah, I can go. I don't have much other than what Rusty has. Been working with Kim and Cindy to try to lower some bills within the budget, mostly utility bills. So it's still ongoing. We had 5 members that took and passed a 5-week course called Principal Instructions. And then 1 member that took Fire Officer 1 who passed as well. That was a 3-month course.
Who's that that did that? Who did fire officer?
Like,
Thank you. Is that it?
other than that info I gave you,
So we're not going to talk about a whole pile this very second, but the chief has a potential proposal, many pages with specs and stuff of a new fire truck that the department probably needs. Our 2 fire trucks that we use are both very old. It will cost a whole bunch of money to fix one of them up. But they run, he'll tell you more about it. It's $10,000 a year to repair one because it's constantly broken. Anyways, we probably need a new fire truck. We have the ability to buy one from someone who has a state bid type of contract for $100,000 less than you can usually buy these for, but it's still $500,000. There's 200, once again, this is all not exactly perfectly accurate. There's a $237,000 in our truck reserve account. So he's going to be proposing that we buy a fire truck in any number of possible ways. And those could be lease purchase agreement through the company that has it, a bond from the village, who knows what with stimulus money, et cetera, et cetera. So just be aware that that's coming. Do you want me to go farther right this minute or just get them aware?
What would we do with the old truck we replaced? Would that be used as like trade-in?
so we got a trade-in quote of $10,000 for it.
Which ain't much.
No, but
And the reason because of that is the frame machine.
the what?
It has a bad frame and that's just not fixable with any reasonable amount of money. Anyway,
I suggest not trade.
And the license.
That seems like it'd be worth more to us or somebody.
yeah, we might be, yeah, $10,000 is not significant trade.
The last 4 years, it's equal maintenance wise, it's in the paper there, but I think it was 9,700, 9,800 a year. We're paying the maintenance. NFPA compliance is behind. Basically, to refurbish that truck would cost the village $460,000.
Wow.
Use it for parades, rent it out for,
The new truck is
And it's an old truck too.
500, give or take.
Is that the 95 truck?
It's a 2004. It's our first new engine. It's the one with the American flag on it. Goes to every single fire call we have.
New truck is 600 or 700 grand. This is a minimum 100 grand less because of all the factors of the company. It's a legitimate company, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, we got a lot to go on tonight unless we have a giant time scrunch on this?
Sooner the better.
Yeah, okay, then we're not going to do that right now.
At this point.
We're not ready to do it anyways, but we're not, but I
Yeah,
want
not
everybody to be aware, I want everybody to be aware, and
That's why I wanted to give you guys all the paperwork and stuff like that, but
Yeah, so I guess let's, I know, I think, did you send it to me? The
I think I got, that's the one with 33, 333.
Right, you sent out the details.
yeah,
right?
yep.
okay.
Start chewing it over.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Would the new truck have a flag on it too?
No.
So I like that.
The flag.
Cars and bars.
Trying to save as much money as possible.
You get the same artist that's doing the nice job on the building over at the pool.
It's
Doing a
getting
really
pretty
nice
bad
job
over
over
there.
there.
at Park.
It's got a fish at school.
Yeah, one fish.
One fish, two fish, three.
I'm late.
Sorry, I got a sidetracked.
You
I
want to keep that
apologize.
book?
Is that your copy or is that another?
That's my copy.
Yeah, why don't you, I got most of it pretty much on the other.
Yeah.
Okay, you take your
I
copy.
can go down to the village tomorrow and have the lady somebody make a copy of a 500-page book. if you want. Everybody want a copy of that?
No, don't make one for everybody, just make one that we can keep in the
Send all that
village
stuff
office.
out, right?
Got this thing digital.
It was
Takes
sent.
up a lot less space.
Okay. We good for now, Jim?
I think you'll find it easier that way too.
Thanks, Jim.
I don't believe we have anything from the police today.
Yeah, I talked to him like 6 or 7 times today, but nothing about the board meeting.
Yeah, there you go. Just too much going on. All right. Thank you for doing that. And hey, Robin's not on, so
Yeah, Robin's not on and
well, then thanks for,
haven't heard from
Anything
her
from her,
besides.
Fran?
but Fran can do the thing from her
I
later.
don't have a report from her, I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, that's fine.
It's EMS week, so tell them all things.
yeah.
Thanks, Chief Norris.
Good night.
Thanks, Jimmy. Back to Peter.
Back to the secret. Oh, I forgot.
Let Jeff go.
Oh, Jeff. Hey, Jeff.
I think he's sleeping anyway.
Nate,
Yes.
I got a question. I got an email from Robin. I want to ask her how much to finance the new beach chassis. And it's going to be about $125,000. So what I did last time, like a year ago, I asked for some bids from like all the local banks, just in the village or just outside, maybe Tiger State Bank. Can I do that again, like ask for by bank, give me a sealed bid on such and such date and tell them what I want?
For the bank's financing, is that what you're asking?
Bank financing for the ambulance. I mean, there was a couple ready to do it, but we never, it was like a year out. So
We passed all the resolutions, right?
we passed the resolution, but I just want to know how you want me to finance.
Yeah, so you can just get quotes from banks that are interested in offering financing. The financing's considered kind of like a professional service, and so there's no bid requirement for that. Many of my clients just go to TSB or NBT or Chemung Canal. A couple of them have used that before, and ask for rates and get a rate and say, yep, that's good enough for us. So NBT is one that routinely does these. And Owego State Bank has done some.
Okay. Well, I asked Community Bank and I also asked M&T. So I understand they all had a couple of them just say, please send me a quote and, go over on such and such date.
Yeah, and when you ask them for the quotes, I don't recall if we limited I think we limited the bonding to 5 years, no more than 5 years. So then
140,000, I think the bid comes back about 125. What they need.
So the only other thing, Rod, to just ask the bank when they give you a quote is whether the quote is for a callable bond or if it's non-callable. So like basically, could the village prepay it if it wanted to?
We want it to be called.
Well, the bank might give you a better rate if it's not callable. Of course, you can't pay it off early then.
I'll ask you. All right, thanks.
Yeah, if you got anything besides this 100-page secret?
Jeff, you mean? You're talking to Jeff?
Well, we can't hear you now. When you did, we could hear you before.
It's one hell of a mine.
Can't hear you, Jeff.
Sit on mute somehow.
I don't know how he does this. This happens to him all the time.
We can't hear you, Jeff.
Can't hear you.
Doug does it.
Is there, did he cover his mic maybe?
I don't know. It's only after the dog is up there.
Jeff, if you can hear us, we haven't heard a word you've said. We see your mouth moving, we can't hear you.
I'm good at reading lips here.
I only know
We
that.
could do a bad lip reading. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
No, can't hear you now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jeff, first words.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're good now.
Start again.
Well, you did, but it fixed it.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Jeff.
The only other thing I have is the shared services
Oh, yeah.
sweeper grant. Right? Did everybody get that email?
I talked
Yes.
to Castellucci.
I have information. Yeah, so this is $338,000 sweeper.
Right. Our portion would be $50,781.99.
Now is that just a one-time shot?
One-time deal, yep. The
Jeff,
county would, the county's share is $25,390 and the town's share is $76,172. It's all based on how much each municipality would use it.
We would use it the most. We use it, the other one the most, right?
Well, the town would use this one. The town use this one more than we do.
They got a lot more miles of road.
Right.
Jeff, these are numbers that you talked with Castellucci or someone from the town about with the amount of use?
Yes, we had a meeting with the county, the town of Owego, and the village of Nichols. Village of Nichols is actually going to ask for the grant. The reason for that is because they're the poorest of the four of us.
Excellent.
Oh.
So if you guys want to pursue this, we'd need a written commitment to provide our match as outlined in the Team Tioga thing that I sent you.
You see any downside in this?
No.
Do we have the 50 grand somewhere?
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have to pay it till next year, but yes.
Nate, is this kosher? Like, do we need to do anything?
We're gonna need it. There's a delivery cost on that too?
Just a regular motion or tricks and whistles, Nate?
So how again are we paying for this? I just not recalling hearing it.
Be out of DPW's budget.
The budget, or are we using a reserve account?
Well, we could use a reserve account, yeah.
And this is, it's ultimately an application for a grant, and I apologize, I've been also reading up on all the seeker questions that you guys are likely to be asking me, so.
Great.
Yes, it's a shared services grant.
Right, so I mean, an application for a grant is what it is. And then the village's portion would be paid out of either the budget or a reserve fund. If you're going to use a reserve fund, then I think we should authorize using the reserve fund before committing to the grant application. And you'd have to wait for the permissive referendum period that likely applies to use of the reserve fund before being able to authorize the grant then.
Mr. Mayor. Question. Jeff says that because this isn't going to be, take the time for the grant and the sweeper, et cetera, we won't be buying this in this fiscal year. Can we approve all this now? And then when we do our budget process, add the $50,000 from wherever we added into the budget for next year? Would that be the way?
But we currently have 116,000 in the reserve for DPW.
Yep, and I'm saying, can we do it this other way rather than depleting the reserve and rather than going through all that process? Can we just, we may be having some more monies that we may be able to use.
I forget what we put in the DPW reserve each year.
120,000,
I can tell you,
15,000.
But would that pass muster if we approve this tonight and then
Pay later.
put it, yeah, it'll be a budget line item next year in next year's fiscal budget starting August 1st. Can we do that? Nate, can we do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you choose to approve the grant without appropriating or, authorizing yourselves to use your reserve fund, then it's going to have to come from the budget somewhere.
Okay, and we'd have to generate the letter of commitment to the other entities.
Right, so they're just looking at for the letter of commitment that we're interested. We don't have to make these.
No, they're not looking for a letter of commitment. They're interested. They want to apply for this grant, and they want the people all to sign up and be ready for this. They don't want to say, and you decide later. They want to know now whether we're going to do this.
If we commit and they get the grant, we're on the hook for $50,781.
Because we're giving them a letter that says we're going to do it.
Right, we have time to come up with that.
Where
$50,000
yeah, because that won't be for another 6 months or a year where we get that money.
She'll be gladly paying Wednesday for hamburger today.
Thank you.
Currently, we sound like we're in favor, we just don't know where the money is coming from.
So what would the motion, I'm going to make a motion. What will it be? It will be that we approve going in with the entities for the grant, and we approve sending them the letter that Jeff has outlined of commitment. Is that something along those verbiage?
Yeah, I think as long as we're not planning to use the reserve fund, you don't have to specify specifically today where it's coming from. It's just at the time that the bill comes due, you're going to need to appropriate from somewhere at that point.
That motion didn't specify where the money's coming from.
Right.
Yep. So you generally have what I said, Randy? Jeff, we have to have a letter. They want a letter of commitment of some sort, like, is that what you said?
In the letter, it says.
We get a written commitment to provide the match that I outlined.
And that's what the
50,000.
motion is that we do.
There's two things. There's a written commitment to provide the match outlined above, which was the $50,071,997. And then enter into a shared service agreement between Tabitha County, Village of Owego, Town of Owego, and Village of Nichols.
Put that on.
Okay. That's
second that
what
motion
yours
and
is.
stuff.
And a pinky swear.
So who's, even though you seconded it?
Ron did.
I've only said it 5 times. Most people stop talking.
You vote on that? Charles?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a yes.
Yes.
Fran? Laura?
Yeah.
And a yes. Anything, Joe?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Jeff, for getting that ditch filled in on the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff, I have a question for you. What's the policy of brush pickup bags? Are we using paper or plastic? The village.
Presently, we use both. It would be in our best interest to make it only biodegradable paper bags. But as it stands right now, it's both.
I've heard there was an issue with the paper because when the workers pick them up, they explode all over the place.
You heard something I haven't heard.
Okay, I was told today as my brush was being picked up.
Rain all week.
Okay, I just thought there was like an either or kind of thing. So,
There is, but I personally think that we should make it only paper bags.
okay,
If they explode, then they can bring the suction truck.
there we go. We have that sweeper. Sweep up this stuff.
There you go.
Anybody else?
Well, the problem was, I'm sorry, the problem was they were putting stuff other than brush into the plastic. Like stuff.
So
Garbage.
the other problem is we pick up the plastic bags, we take them down to the mulch pile. We have to split them open and then bring the empty plastic bags back to the barn to take to the transfer station. If they were paper, we could just toss them on the pile and be done with it.
You wouldn't have to go through it because they've been finding stuff like knives and all kind of stuff.
Uranium.
That shouldn't have
Right.
uranium. Shouldn't be in there.
Right. Correct.
We're just looking out for the health and safety of the workers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving along.
All right. Anybody else?
That's all I got.
Okay. Should we circle back to the seeker?
Yep.
Go enjoy your dog there, Jeff.
All right, Nate, your show again.
Oh boy. So question one, impact on land. As we've been, as you've gone through the rest of the other folks to get them out of here, I've done a couple things. One, question my choices in life, and then two, look at the seeker workbook that the DEC has online, which helps, is a really useful tool for the boards to understand how the workbook and these questions are meant to be analyzed and reviewed. So specifically regarding question one, impact on land, the DEC, talks about how this question asks the reviewing agency to evaluate potential impacts of any physical alteration, and then they actually give some helpful examples of projects that would not include any physical alteration, and they actually list the adoption of a local law as not involving alteration of land. And so insofar as there is a potential for future development as a result of this local law, yes. However, this local law itself does not necessarily cause direct alteration or leads indirectly and definitively to alteration on land. So insofar as the board was perhaps of two minds, maybe it's a yes, maybe it's a no to this question, I think the DEC workbook kind of helps answer that.
That it's not.
Thank you, Nate.
So it's no, basically.
Right, question one would be a no, and then we could go to question two. Believe me, there are lots of other questions at which there might very well be a yes, and we'll need to go through those, but at least this initial one, I think would be a no.
Everybody good with that?
Okay.
Move on.
All right, question number two.
Impact on geological features. This is meant to be about impacts to unique or unusual landforms and natural landmarks. Specifically, it asks, would this result, or may it result in the modification or destruction of, or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site, e.g. cliffs, dunes, minerals, fossils, caves?
No, we don't have unusual land features here.
That I'm aware of.
All right. Everybody agree with no on that?
Did the go ahead for question three?
Oh, you want me to read it?
I mean, feel free. You can read the room a little better than I can. I feel distanced.
You're invited too, don't worry. Impacts on surface water. Proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies. Example, streams, rivers, ponds, or lakes.
It doesn't affect them, they affect it. So that would be no.
Is that a consensus? Everybody agree with that? Or- Go on to the next page. Number 4, impact on groundwater. Proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to the groundwater or aquifer.
No.
No, we're not using the groundwater. Yeah, I would say no from reading the subparts.
Right, just not going to affect our drinking water or
Right.
things of that nature.
No, it's not gonna affect the groundwater.
No.
You're talking about the proposed action. What is the proposed action?
To take out the
Passing
fill,
local law.
to take out the fill. Compensatory fill law.
Well, here's one. This is part of the-
Number 5?
Impact on flooding. The proposed action may result in development on land subject to flooding.
So that one, I would say yes, so we should go through the questions for that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so 5A, the proposed action may result in development in a designated floodway.
So we're not allowing a floodway. Like that's development within the river and the creek. The
Right.
floodway.
The floodway is this,
The map there, the blue on the
Comes
map.
over the banks.
Bodies of water.
well, yeah, kind of. Where the flow. This crosshatch.
Red areas, right?
No, the crosshatch blue area.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about has nothing to do with piece of development in water.
Yeah, well, you can't develop in there.
So that's a no.
Nate, did you look at this one?
I don't believe I've seen the maps, if that's what you're asking about.
No, just the whole number 5, as you were looking through the things and thought we might have trouble with some.
Yeah, so I mean, 5, I think the initial question of whether it's a yes or a no, I think saying, kind of as Laura mentioned, calling this one a yes and then going through those sub questions is the best way to work through this particular one.
Do it. The proposed action may result in development within a 100-year floodplain.
It's a yes.
Well, so there's no or yes, well, there's a no.
Small impact, moderate or large impact.
Right.
Okay,
We
so,
both had the 100 and the 500-year flood, right?
yeah, so our maps show the floodplain, the 100-year, 500-year, the 2017 email from the county, or advisement to the counties that are, we're supposed to go by the 500-year level for our analysis.
Mhm.
And so what we're seeing here is more relative to that. So like, pink is more like 100-year, and the, yellow is like more like a 500-year. If you think about it with what we saw at the flood, you can see that the courthouse is in that 500-year.
You got the, is this the map you're looking at?
Yeah. So if you're looking at it that way, think of the pink is 100, and then yellow is 500 here.
That's not right.
Well, the
Because,
question is,
because the yellow is all up around the railroad, it's up on Fox Street, the places that didn't flood, that's not the 500. Am I doing that right? No, I'm wrong, excuse me, sorry.
yeah, it's pretty accurate. The proposed action may result in development within the 100-year flood.
Yeah, what's that mean, Nate?
So is it likely that there will be impacts? So that this is kind of what the question is. Will there be impacts to or as a result of this project? And specifically asking yourself, may result in development within a 100-year floodplain. What are the impacts to development within the 100-year floodplain as a result of passing this local law? You know, so is it no or small or moderate to large? And this is not about what mitigation measures might we have in place that reduce the potential for impact. This is just, is there a potential for impacts as a result of this? And small impacts are those that would result in minor changes to the landscape, or if there's a use with a pervious surface is the phrasing. So, you know, asphalt impervious, gravel more pervious. If their structures are present but already built above base flood level, or if there's some potential for limited grading or clearing. Those are small types of impacts. Moderate or large are where you have the potential for construction of large expanses of impervious surfaces within the 100-year floodplain, or clearing, grading, creating walls or berms that alter the flow of water or drainage patterns for this type of project, or for this action and future potential projects. So I think what the board kind of has to ask yourself is, okay, so there's potential impacts, but are they likely or not, right? So this local law would potentially allow folks to no longer, adopting this local law would no longer require folks to provide compensatory drainage or storage of water. So by not requiring that anymore, have we created a strong likelihood or a likelihood that there will be development in the floodplain? And if so, what kind of development are we expecting?
I would say yes, and moderate to large for the 100-year floodplain.
I'd be inclined to agree, honestly.
Yeah.
So what happens if we say yes and moderate to large in the 100-year floodplain? What happens then?
So in part 3, you will be asked, or you're required to explain in part 3 why any questions you answered yes and moderate to large impact on will either not actually have any impacts, or why those impacts would be mitigated. So, you know, and this I've mentioned earlier, right? For large projects, we have site plan review and seeker to assist the village in mitigating potential impacts as a result of development. You know, it's only the potential residential uses that I think would no longer have this compensatory fill requirement on its face. And I'm not aware of another mechanism we have under the village code currently to pull those back into some level of village review.
So Nate, wouldn't that argue for it not being moderate to large? Since it's, I mean, unless there's a flurry of single family home building going on in the floodplain.
Yeah, so
affected.
It's still a moderate to large, because part 2 is about the potential impacts. Part 3 is now we're mitigating those potential impacts. And so, Ed, yes, you're right. This mitigates the fact that we have seeker site plan review mitigates the impacts from the large developments. I'm not sure if there's a mitigating mechanism for single family development, but then, Ed, as you mentioned, it's unlikely there's going to be a flurry of single family home building in the village as a result of this local law. And the only other way for a bunch of single family home building to occur is if, well, probably if there's a flood and a bunch of homes get inundated and have to get torn down, and then people seek to rebuild. So, you know, one in 100 years for the 100-year floodplain, a 1% chance in a year. Those are the types of things that we need to think through if you answered moderate to large on this.
I think this probably would be a moderate to large. I mean,
All right, so in A, designated floodway, we had no, because
Right.
we're not gonna build it or whatever there, right?
I think B and C.
B was moderate or large in the 100-year?
Yeah.
What about 500-year?
Same thing, the whole village is in 500-year floodplain.
No, actually, no, it's, the whole village is not at all.
So, but then I guess the question would be also, what's the potential impact on the 500-year floodplain because of this law, right? And so then, Jeff, I'll ask, is there a compensatory fill requirement in the 500-year floodplain?
I think Jeff left.
Oh, no, I see. He's looking at the screen.
No.
Large.
And then he's going to take 2 minutes to
Was
get
that
it.
again?
Okay,
Maybe you could use hand signals.
so we're talking about the 500 now?
Yeah.
So we're gonna, when we explain it, we're gonna mitigate the 100, we're gonna mitigate the 500 anyways. So let's put yes, or the moderate to large on the 500 also, because we're gonna say the same thing we're gonna say about the other one.
Yeah, I mean, the 500 is that yellow area.
I mean, to Rusty's point, I do think the same analysis applies to the 500-year floodplain. It's just that it might not be moderate or large if there's no compensatory fill requirement currently for the 500-year floodplain. You're not changing anything in that case for the 500-year floodplain.
I don't think we have, do we have anything in our code about the 500-year floodplain? Do we,
So when people want to build, they are looking to build in places that are high and dry, and this law is not saying it's only for building in the floodway. This is a law that does the compensatory storage for the entire village. So we get to look at it that way. You know, we're not just saying, are we looking as
we are actually not doing the entire village right now. We're doing the 100 and the 500. We might not, Jeff, do we even have a 500-year floodplain?
Do you mind if I comment on this?
Yes, we do. Who is it?
Oh, do you want me to comment or not? There are no requirements or restrictions in the 500-year floodplain, none. So, so the compensatory storage does not apply to the entire village, only to the 1% annual chance floodplain. Or they call it FEMA special hazard area now.
Elaine, thank you for jumping in and clarifying that. As we've been talking, I've been trying to look up the definitions under our flood damage code, and I believe I found the section that Elaine has been talking about, and I agree with Elaine. So I think that it's a no or small impact for the 500-year floodplain.
Okay,
Let's put that.
because this portion doesn't
Is that
apply.
good?
Makes sense.
What about the next one?
The proposed action may result in or require modification of existing drainage patterns. Maybe,
Go to the water be drainage.
I don't know.
Drained over to the village.
It drains at the village.
Doesn't go out, comes in.
Goes out, right? I don't know, this probably wouldn't, I don't know.
Did any of our floods happen during the full moon?
I don't know.
It would have been higher, right?
Once again, drainage patterns. What's it mean? What's the deal?
So this would be changes such as channeling, creating impoundments, stormwater increases, altered flow patterns. Those are all things that modify drainage patterns of surface water flow. So like also stormwater runoff. So it's basically water being diverted from its normal flow as a result of this local law potentially allowing later construction that would not have happened but for passing this law. I think similarly, many of the reasons we talked about how the 100-year floodplain development would be potentially mitigated apply to this as well. So if the board said, well, we think it's potentially a moderate to large impact in part 3, you know, it again, to me, large construction projects are going to require site plan and seeker. And those are the major drivers of much of the environmental impacts.
Yeah, I would say yes.
So let's put moderate there and on the next one and explain them both with the same explanation.
Yeah, I mean, they're all going to explain the explanation.
Yep, but D and E are both
Yes,
there. The next one, the dam, not that one, but
E is the proposed action may change flood water flows that contribute to flooding. That would have to be yes. You fill land and don't take it out somewhere, it's going to change the.
But yeah, it's the small or large, smaller, moderate, large. We're going to put moderate and large on both those.
Yeah.
Okay, and then small on the dam.
And then F is if there is a dam located on the site of the proposed action, is the dam in need of repair?
There isn't one, so that.
No to that. We don't have any of those.
So Nate, where do we put under impacts? Where do we put the next piece of this? The explanation piece.
That'll be in part 3. So
okay.
We're not at part 3 yet. Finish the rest of the questions, and then we'll go back and just say, okay, which ones did we answer yes, moderate to large potential impacts to, and then the mayor will need to, you know, I'll email the mayor the language to use for part 3, and then we'll do it that way.
How about, let's move it along. How about air?
So question 6, impact, there's a G too, other impacts. Say no.
Oh, you don't want to be adding stuff in there.
Okay, impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state regulated air emission source.
No.
Yeah.
Impacts on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in loss of flora or fauna.
No.
Impact on agricultural resources. The proposed action may impact agricultural resources. Yeah, no. Looking through the sub questions there, I'd say no too.
No on that one? Great.
9, impact on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or are in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between a proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource.
Yeah.
I mean, I would
we
say
have
no.
we have zone and coding. We have zone and coding for all that stuff.
Yeah, but this is on the law. Taking out the paragraph.
That no?
Yeah. Impact on historic and archaeological resources. Proposed action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological resource.
Well, we are on the National Historical Register, and our historic district is in it. Will it have a?
I would think yes.
Well, if you read A, wholly or partially within contiguous to buildings on the National Register.
Like what 300 structures are in the historic district, included in the historic district on that, within the register.
So you want to put yes there and then go down to A, B, and C?
Yeah, we can.
Yes there. B and C are archaeological, which we don't have. And C is archaeological, which we don't have, but A was the historic district.
Yeah. The entire historic district.
Is in the 100-year floodplain, right?
Yeah. Well, there's sections that,
Couple sections.
couple properties that are not, like,
Probably.
in the first floor.
So if A is the, subpart A is the kind of open question, is it a no or small impact or a moderate to large impact? I mean, the phrasing of this is meant to be really, I'll say, the goal of it is to preserve historic and archaeological resources, so specifically historic resources. So I think that the question is set up in a way to lead you to almost assume it's going to be potentially moderate to large impacts from almost anything that happens in the historic district.
Yep.
But it's the potential for it. And insofar as development occurs as a result of no more compensatory fill requirement under a local law in the 100-year floodplain, is there likely to be development happening, or the potential impact is development happening here within your historic district?
And there's not.
Yeah, do you think that there will be a lot of potential development occurring in the historic district as a result of the passage of this local law? It's a fully built out environment, right?
It's already built.
But a lot of the historic district is in the 500-year floodplain, not the 100.
Right, there's regulations by OTC to regulate what goes in, where it goes in.
Right. So I can see the reason, or I can see a reason to say it's no or small, and even if it were moderate to large, in this particular case, right, with a historic district, you have your historic preservation committee that also reviews stuff to make sure that the impacts to historic resources.
So all the things you said on the other one, plus the historic limitation also. The other limitations and this one on top.
And the difference, right, is that historic preservation does review single family homes. So this is in one sense more protective than the loophole, not loophole, but the gap that exists otherwise for residential homes wouldn't really apply in the historic district, because I think I know when the historic district is reviewing projects, they also need to comply with seeker.
So do we put the moderate and explain it, or we just put the small and don't need to explain it?
Again, I think that'll be up to the board and whether you consider this to be no or small or moderate to large. I mean, again, what's the likelihood of development occurring within the 100-year floodplain historic district overlap as a result of this?
I would say not likely. There's nowhere to develop, so.
And development, because all that development has to be related to the fill and removal of stuff, and we're not going to let any of that happen in that district.
There's too many systems in place to stop it.
Yeah.
Is small okay there?
Or small.
Small. Done.
Okay, and then C is, so B was about archaeological.
Yeah, and C was archaeological also.
C, yeah, that's archaeological sites. And D is another. And then E is if any are answered moderate to large.
Which we did.
All right, so 11, impact on open space and recreation. Proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or reduction of open space resources as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan.
It's like talking green space or parks, things of that nature.
That's what I was thinking, parks. So we have to take into consideration the new parts that are going in the park.
Yeah.
That's in the floodplain.
But this won't result in development in your park, though.
No. Impact on critical environmental areas.
So we said no on that last one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action may be located within or adjacent to a critical environmental area.
Do we have any CEA in the village? I don't think.
That's the Jeff question.
Jeff would always still.
Oh, he's just.
No,
No.
no.
Elaine answered no for Jeff.
I think you, Elaine, and Jeff.
Well, we know Jeff's answer is no. We just let him do this when we're done.
Impact on transportation. Proposed action may result in improvements to existing transportation systems.
No.
We don't have any places.
Impact on energy. Proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy.
Jesus, could you be more vague there?
I would say no. I mean, some dirt somewhere is not gonna.
Well, Rusty would probably argue it's already taken a lot of his energy.
That's
Yeah.
right. You got it. Thank you.
Everybody good with no on that? Impact on noise, odor, and light. Proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting.
Well,
Is it smelly dirt? Does it get it from the sewage plant?
Is it like during construction?
Yeah, well, it's from.
What do you think?
Or are we talking about putting a theme park in somewhere?
I think this is more geared towards a theme park.
I mean, I don't see the potential for any kind of thing that big.
no. Once again, because these questions are for building something.
Yeah.
They're not really designed for this. Do we say no on it?
Yeah. These are the questions that when somebody wants to build something, they have to go through all these.
Yeah.
Impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants.
No.
I'll go with no on that one.
Yeah, that's it.
Are we good with no? Consistency with community plan. Proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans.
So that, having read our plan, and we're not being consistent with that.
Well, it's the
We
county's
read that, yeah.
hazard mitigation
Plan.
Not our land use plan.
Or for us, that we shouldn't be building,
It's not a,
We don't have a land use plan like that.
floodplain. It was not recommended that we build in the floodplain. Simply, that was a simple statement at the beginning of it.
but we're not changing the land use of the existing, it's still residential, 1, 2, 3, commercial, whatever it is. We're not changing that aspect.
We will be allowing for fill in our floodplain.
But we're not changing the
With this
land
law.
use. I mean, we're not going from green space to house. It's still all R1, R2, whatever the zoning is. We're not changing any aspect of that. Which I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, what this is referring to?
A lot of the sub-questions are about land use.
Yeah, I mean, Ron, I think you're largely correct that, it is about the zoning type of use of land. I think I don't know what the village's comprehensive plan, for example, says. And I also I'm not familiar enough with the hazard mitigation plan to know or say to you, oh, that's definitely the type of land use plan that this calls for.
See, so this thing is a seeker. So suppose somebody someplace wanted to build a big apartment building someplace in the village of Owego. This seeker is for that. And these questions are for that. We want to build an apartment building. Now they got to do a seeker for that apartment building. But for this idea, it's weird.
And we're not changing the use of the land.
So again, I think what you guys might be missing is the question is the proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans, yes or no. Consistency doesn't necessarily mean exact. And so this is one amendment to your flood damage prevention law. And insofar as the flood hazard mitigation plan talks about needing to mitigate flood hazards, right? I can see an argument to say doing this is still consistent with the hazard mitigation plan because everything else about the flood damage prevention law is still in place. This is a tweak to it. And as we've talked about, there's this is potentially mitigated in the future anyway by your large project site-specific reviews. Residential home construction isn't necessarily going to flourish as a result of adoption of this. And so I think there's a lot of things I can see to saying no on this, or if you went through the subparts, still identifying them as no or small.
I think it's a no.
To be honest,
Change its zone.
to be honest, yeah, once again, I think all of this is no, because the thing we're changing isn't any of this stuff. Once again, this would come into once this is changed and then somebody does a project, what's the seeker on that project? That'd be my general take. I'd say no.
No, let's move on.
All right, so I think we have consensus on that.
Is it 11 o'clock already?
It's gonna be tomorrow, too. Consistency with community character. Proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character. I would say no on this one.
No, because
That's another, because it's back to zone changing. Yeah.
Okay, that was part two.
Project.
Now there's part three, which is the reasons why we answered some of the part two ones yet.
We do that on 5. Did we do it on anything else? Let me just go back.
Yeah, we only
We did the one for the history.
Mayor, did I write this down correctly? Was it question 5, subparts B, D, and E?
Yep, that was piece of it. Sorry. Spoke on that.
Okay.
Hey, guys, I hate to take us backwards, but before we leave and go on to part 3, I just had a nagging thought in my mind.
Good.
Don't we have in the brick pond, a special, what is it called? A special,
Critical
Reclamation?
A CEA.
yeah.
No, there is not one there.
Thank you.
Okay.
oh, thank you, Kevin.
So yeah, Nate, those are the only ones. Question 5, subpart B, D, and E.
So then when completing part 3, you're to decide whether you're going to require an environmental impact statement to further assess this action, or whether or not your available information helps you conclude the proposed action will not have a significant adverse environmental impact. And I'm basically just reading part 3 right now. Right. To complete this section, we have to identify the impacts based on the part 2 responses, and then describe the potential magnitude of the impacts. Magnitude is about severity, size, and potential extent of the impact that you're concerned about. Then you assess the importance of the impact. This is about geographic scope, the duration, probability of the impact occurring, number of people affected by the impact, and any other environmental consequences you can think of. And then you take into consideration any design element or project changes or other mitigating factors that might take place. So your proposed action, right? Removal of the compensatory fill requirement within the 100-year floodplain. In question 5, subparts B, D, and E, the board identified potential moderate to large impacts as a result of that development. So I'll ask, what specifically are the impacts that we're identifying, and then let's talk about the magnitude.
I assume we're talking about any large-scale development that may arise at some point in the future, if at all.
Right, so I think it was that, and then also the residential home construction, right? I think those were really the two impacts that might happen as a result of this.
Yeah, those are the impact. Residential home, I think would be low in fact.
Right, I mean, residentially, like you said, there's not gonna be an influx of people building houses.
There's no one to build them.
If they happen to flood and need to be rebuilt, then we will have an impact. I think we're gearing more towards a large scale, something where we need more control, which the seeker, I think, fulfills that requirement.
So I'll say potential impacts, creation of potential. The impact is the potential for additional flooding or diverted flooding due to new construction of large developments and single family homes.
Yep.
Right.
And you could put, if you felt like it, because we've checked drainage, you could put the word drainage in there too, if you so felt like it.
Okay, and then, so that's the potential impact that you're concerned about. But then what is the magnitude? How would we describe the extent potentially of these impacts? And so there's two categories, and they both require, or we should consider the severity, the size, and the extent of it.
So the larger the amount of displaced, or the larger the amount, this isn't exactly right. The larger the amount of fill, the larger the potential for impact on neighboring properties, something like that.
Makes sense.
Right, so let's see. The severity of this action is dependent on the amount of fill that now, or excuse me, excavation that now no longer needs to be done as compensatory storage.
Right. Yep.
And so for large development, there's potentially a high potential severity if there was nothing else that was potentially mitigating it.
And small, and single, whatever. If you want to put in a single dwelling, single family.
Right, so, you know, I don't know how much compensatory excavation would typically need to be conducted for a single family home. I mean, but the footprint of a home is much less than a large type of development that's subject to, that triggers our site plan law. So does the board think that single family home construction has a potential for high severity, or that it's also likely there will be a significant single family home development as a result of this law?
Nope, you don't expect that.
No, not the single home. I think
So the quantity and the whatever are low severity. The potential quantity of whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so then getting back to the, so I just have written down low potential for severity, size, and extent of single home construction increases in the village.
Right.
And then for large potential development concerns, you know, we'd said, well, if there is a large development, there's potentially severe impacts due to there being no compensatory excavation. That's a potential, not a guarantee, and again, not discussing potential mitigation. Do we think that this is going to trigger a significant amount of larger scale developments within the village by adopting local law?
No, because we have those other things in place.
So that's the ultimate answer I think that we're getting to. But do we think that this is going to increase applications for development within the village that would trigger our kind of site plan law?
No. There'd be hardly anybody anywhere would do any of that.
I mean, we're certainly aware of one potential project. So in that case, it seems like a moderate potential for increased development within the village due to this change.
What's her name? What's her name from 2x4 lots back here so bad?
Hey, Nate.
Yeah.
Nate.
Oh,
Doesn't local law 2 kick in on all this too? Special use permit for new construction and substantial improvements?
Yeah, we haven't yet had the board adopt local law number 2 yet, so it's a
Yeah, but it's already in there. We're just changing one word in that. So
Right.
as of right now, it's even, and that would kick in even on single family houses.
You know, I hadn't thought about that.
Even more protection.
Yep. And that's if the board does make that change to the special use permit section, right? But that change, I think, is about not new construction, but alterations to existing buildings, right, Jeff?
Well, right now that law says that anything done in the floodplain needs a special use permit. And we're proposing to change it to new construction or substantial improvement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So, you know, I think, and thanks for, I wish you brought that up a little earlier when we were talking about the potential impacts for single family construction, because if there's new construction or substantial improvements to a single family home within the area of special flood hazard or the 100-year floodplain, then that special use permit requirement would mitigate that.
Right.
Which is, you know, good in the sense of working through seeker. So, okay. Well, anyway, so I think we were talking about there's a potential moderate development increase as a result of this law. Where were we? The importance of the impact, I think it's a pretty important impact because there's potential damage to neighboring parcels as a result of this. However, all of that being said, now we get to the part that Rusty mentioned, I think fairly recently. We have built into your zoning code site plan review for large scale developments. And then actually, as Jeff has also just pointed out, even your single family homes apparently within the 100-year floodplain would require a special permit from the village in order to accomplish new construction or substantial improvements to them, which would again potentially trigger the just the special use permit process. It would trigger that, which would give the village an opportunity to require mitigation of impacts.
So there is a certain level of protection against.
Yeah, against the single.
Okay. Pretty protected. Right.
That would be even more layers for the historic district.
Yeah.
Does that take care of everything there, or is there more there?
Yeah, so I think just recapping it, right? Magnitude there's 2 types of impacts that you're concerned about. The large development potential for flooding or diverted flooding due to new construction, and then single family homes, specifically construction or new construction or substantial improvements. in your area of special flood hazard, but all of those, we've worked through the potential magnitude. There is some potential for damage or harm as a result of these. However, it's all mitigated by the village's built-in site plan review process and special permit process. Those two processes are meant to capture environmental concerns of all stripes, and flooding and the potential for it certainly fits that character. So with all of that being said as the explanation, and Mayor, I'll email you something a little more snappy in writing to include in the form. But with that understanding as the mitigating circumstances, if a majority of the board agrees, then I think a motion to make a negative determination on seeker for adoption of local law number, whatever we're at.
2001.
I think that would be appropriate for the seeker at this point.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
So we need to vote on that right now?
Yep.
Carl? Yes. Ron?
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Fran?
Yes.
Laura? And yes. Okay.
With that, I gotta excuse myself because I have to go to work.
Wait, one of us has a job.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Anything else I gotta vote on?
Well, the law.
Number two.
The law. Enough of that.
Wish I could.
Off you go. Good to see you. Thanks.
Great, great. I have nothing in my report.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to update this, right?
We have a motion right now about what, accepting the seeker. What was the motion here?
No, we already accepted this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're back to the law now, right?
We've untabled the law.
We've untabled the motion to approve the law. And we've negatively declared the secret. So I think we're at the point where we can vote on it, right, Nate? We'd like to vote on it.
And I'm not trying to make this go any longer, but this is the last discussion.
Yeah, now state what we're voting on.
So-
Pass the law, removing the paragraph.
Local law one, removing that paragraph about the conservatory. Conservatory. We have the motion.
It will go back to last meeting.
We have the motion. We have it seconded. Whoever made it last meeting.
It was me.
I think I seconded it.
I think I made the law and Rusty seconded it.
So either way, Rodney will find it, but it's in there, Rodney. We did it.
We did a lot, yeah, then we tabled it at the end. All right, so let's vote. Ron?
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Fran?
No.
Laura?
No.
And yes.
It's actually four.
So now our Mr. Mayor? So now I believe our intention, our mission is to get moving on the CRS, to do various things and whatever help we need, things we need to do to try and get us certified on CRS. Because that is our intention. This is just one little piece that let's get those two violations taken care of that Julie hasn't taken care of so far. No?
So who are we assigning the tasks to?
Oh, that's not, I don't know. That's not my province.
So one thing in the emails is we do need a floodplain coordinator. He's got one. So I don't know if anybody knows We need a code enforcement officer in general.
That's part of that financial aspect. We need a code.
Yeah.
We need floodplain.
Well, we have,
Hopefully the same guy does both. It would be much easier.
we have money for code, we just can't actually find anybody.
Laura, you were saying no. Did you think we shouldn't pursue the CRS now? I lost you in the middle of that.
We've been pursuing CRS, and I don't know who's going to continue.
Because do you think they'll be discouraged because of that action?
Yeah, I've been working at it and going to meetings for many months now. Are you going to pick a new person on the board? I don't know.
Do you not want to do it anymore?
I'm disheartened. We've been working at it for a long time, and I personally was going to work on some of the violations to help with personal connections to try to help clear the violations. Because official letters from the village don't work. And I don't know who your volunteers are to do this. Thanks, people working. And the people who are volunteering from the village, are they going to continue working now? Yes.
That is,
think so.
I mean, from a personal point of view, like I said, we don't make much on the village board. I get disheartened all the time, but I'm not going to give up on the village, and I would hope they would do the same. We're not saying we don't appreciate what they're doing, but we still have to allow growth potential and stuff for our residents. Like I said, I don't care about the projects. I want our houses protected, where I can rebuild. And the seekers, I think, fulfill that large scale, because if they don't displace land, we can't approve them. And I think there's a blurred line between those two things. I think there's a lot of tunnel vision going on, and I wholeheartedly support what they're doing and the grand scale. Like, I don't care if there's ever a housing development built. I just want to protect what we have as this village. I love it the way it is.
There probably won't be a housing
Well,
development.
it's very possible.
Because of that, because of
I
other
don't see
factors.
how they would ever pass the seeker.
There's people that live across the street from where they're going to build that will probably make a fuss about water being displaced. So that, yeah.
I think about land on a hill that is out of the floodplain we didn't allow because the seeker wouldn't permit for certain things.
But anyway, I'm sorry if the gang that has been working so hard is discouraged. I feel badly about that. I hope they're not terribly discouraged. Come to us and ask us for 15 other things. That thing isn't one of them. Let's get 15 others. We are supportive. If you think that because we did one thing, we're not supportive, I'm sorry.
Anybody online or otherwise knows code enforcement, anybody. I mean, we are desperately looking for somebody to fill those roles. There's just nobody available.
It's a countywide problem, honestly. I mean, Elaine just speak to it, but there's just, we get code enforcement officers, we train them, and then they go for whatever various, they're both for every reason under the book.
I have to imagine it's a very high stress job.
Yeah, I wouldn't want
Yeah, but removing that paragraph just allowed for development and.
But it didn't. It didn't allow for development. It just took the place where you have to go to get the permission for the development to a different spot.
I know, but those communities where you're proposing to build big sites, those people, they're gonna have to muscle up and fight for their neighborhood. And in that community right there, the neighbors, they don't have a lot of resources.
I'm the.
Right?
Yeah, my son, we just bought a house. I'm very invested in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I have faith in, well, at least this current board, to not approve seekers that will displace water. I mean, I don't know about future boards. I mean, like I said, we've turned down multi-million-dollar projects, and I hope that we would do the same if it's going to hurt our neighbors. This, I think, protects our neighbors who are going to be flooded at some point and can't rebuild because of the current law, well, the X law.
Anyway.
Yeah, I would say, my standpoint is the advice of the DEC and FEMA and all the other checkpoints that we had in that we went through with Nate of checks and balances.
And I think tonight is not the proper time because I think it's a very emotionally charged subject. But I'd be glad to continue the discussion. I'm not emotionally involved in it, even though we all have a stake in this because we all live in the floodplain. I mean, none of this was taken lightly.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap this up if we can, so we don't keep doing this, but, and of course, this, various people have spent various time this last year, a whole bunch of people, bunch of committee, Kevin and others, years before, but still the village has dropped the ball, and we don't want to drop the ball. So if you're not freaked out about it, come and help us get along with it, move it along. We want to move this along.
Doing this tonight doesn't disqualify us from getting into CRS and still getting people a discount.
And we want to do that.
We might not be a level 9 or whatever it is, but we'll get there.
Shall we move this meeting over? Let's get the next thing. Yes, no?
Next thing, create a reserve for EMS.
Motion to approve setting up a EMS reserve fund idea for DPW.
We did that last week.
Well, we set up a checking account.
Checking and get checking in
Checking.
So that,
This is reserve, so like you get money at the end of the year, you want to do.
Oh, okay.
so this is a discussion that we will have, but whether we don't have to have it right this second, about there's money left over. They brought in 320 and spent 300. And do we want to leave some of that in a budget for operating next year? Do we want to put some of it in an ambulance reserve fund? When you put it in a reserve fund, it's got to be used for that. You can't overcharge your people over and over and building. That's against the rules, but you can do some of that. So
This would be like reserve for an ambulance down.
and so if we establish a reserve, we'll still have to establish what we're going to put in, how we're going to do it and stuff.
This is just a
Yeah,
step.
This just starts a fund. Actually, we can start a fund and not put a nickel in it.
Sort of to make Rusty's point even more fun and complicated. I don't want you to just say a motion to establish a reserve fund. You really need to be identifying the type of the reserve fund, like what is the purpose for it specifically. So a repair reserve, a equipment reserve, or if you have any intent to potentially fund a new build or conversion of an existing building to house the EMS department by itself, as a capital improvement reserve. So I'd want you to talk about that and specifically identify what this reserve is for.
Let's not establish that tonight. Let's figure out how we want to make it exactly, because we found out before when we had some of the other reserves that it was kind of a little tricksy about that we didn't make them broad enough for a bunch of things that we might want to use them for. Let's talk to our EMS people. Let's talk amongst ourselves and with the attorney and figure out how to do it.
We have the issue with the fire department.
Yeah.
What equipment was-
We have the definition of fire department. What's equipment? The Scott Air Pack's equipment, on and on and on. We'll get it righter this time. Yep.
Next thing, encumbrances. Where we get the list?
Basically, material at the end of last year, these are always projects we've done.
What are we talking about? Oh, crap.
We've found some.
So what do we have to do with that, Mayor? We got a list of encumbrances?
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I guess that's the encumbrances and the transfers, right?
Yeah.
Separated on the agenda.
Transfers, city budget, encumbrances, all at the same time. From the general fund and the sewer fund.
I read them over, they look fine, I would motion to approve.
Second. Mr. Mayor, you've also.
Yes, I went through them with Kim. All right, we'll vote on that. Ron?
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Fran?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And yes. All right. Next thing is minutes, 5/3/2021.
Motion to approve is presented.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? They look good. Ron,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Fran,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and yes. Next thing is a treasurer's report. Sent out my usual summary. Everything is running pretty good at a village level. Police look a little off, but I think we haven't adjusted their budget to incorporate Dom's grant money.
Did we, that 47 grand?
We invested it, but we didn't bump
We didn't put it into the,
Yeah, I think it's in there. So that'll bring their percentage down a little bit. And in general, I want to say keep track of the EMS. They are 25,000 change ahead. And that is expenses versus revenue. As far as revenue versus the budget, we guesstimated 225,000 for this year. They look right on track. So it's good news.
and we would love to be ahead to start some reserve. We'll see how.
And
that plays.
they're behind in, I won't say behind in spending, but they're behind in spending. That's why they're $25,000 ahead.
Move to approve.
Good. Yeah, frugal, there we go. Looks like that. Ron,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Fran,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and yes. All right. Trustee reports. Charles and everything. Ron,
I've got nothing.
Rusty,
No report.
Ed,
Yep, no report.
Fran,
The only thing I would like to report is the cemetery committee. They did work on their priorities for the next 3 years, and we discussed this with Jack as far as figuring the budgeting, so why don't I just give this, we'll put it in the minutes.
okay.
Thank you. That's all.
Laura,
The OHPC is gonna have a special meeting Thursday, May 20th at 9 a.m. It's gonna be at 20 Elm Street. The item on the agenda, I can't remember the address, but it's in the building that you look forward to. And it's to discuss development of that property for the DRI grant. To sort of a new contractor, continue that on.
Because we have that extra fund in the DRI grant for 5 properties that could be used for that.
Non-municipal part of the DRI grant funding within the historic district. So the OHPC is gonna talk about that in a special meeting called, so that's just for the public they could attend.
is that, I think they're gonna do that online too, right?
I'm not sure, but
Maybe
you would have put that up in the meetings and you're gonna know,
Yeah,
otherwise
she
it's
sent me a
in
text.
person, yeah.
About moving the meeting.
Thursday, May 20th at 9 a.m. And that's scheduled for 20 Elm Street, which is the DPW building, Jeff's office.
Yeah, good luck parking over
Yeah.
there. That's why we're not over there.
Situation.
It's a mess.
That's all I have for my.
Okay. Communications, don't have much besides there is a NICOM conference coming up. I think Graham might be the only interested in going, but Cindy's gonna make the reservations tomorrow.
I'm gonna ask anybody else about interest in going to the NICOM conference
At the second one.
second one, June 9th, 10th, 11th.
Fran, have you decided yet if you're gonna go?
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
I can't go all the
I've got to let Cindy know tomorrow, so.
Please, you can go maybe later, but you'll be staying at the Holiday Inn.
No, they said you can't.
Holiday Inn Express.
That's one of the rules.
Oh, yeah, they'll be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they don't-
I have to ask Laura if I can share.
Home
her.
base.
You can, Fran, I do over there.
Yeah.
Other than that, I talked to Jeff Stafford today about the building. At 20 Elm Street, our new building. It's coming along good. You've been by there. The foundation is poured. So the building will start at the top of that wall that's there.
So start framing soon?
It's a metal building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They said, well, by sometime in June, we should see the remnants of a building.
Yeah, I know it'll start to look like a building pretty quick. Yeah. Jeff and Nate, you guys got that stuff about the steel. Do we need anything else on that? Price go up? Kind of, sort of. There's like steel we have to order.
Mayor, I don't recall, did the village board previously approve the purchase of this?
No. Kevin's picture. Hasn't come up yet. But I just want to be able to do whatever we need to do. You know, like if we don't need a motion or something tonight, we might do it. Something about steel. Yeah, so the price of the steel went up by a lot. So what, and it's kind of, call it loophole, but if we submit a change order to Gozer that says that we're gonna increase the price of the steel, they won't pay for it.
They will add it to our,
They won't add it to our loan, or not our loan, but our grant won't cover it.
Okay.
But if we buy the steel and submit the receipt, basically, the grant will cover it.
So if they don't buy it, they won't cover it.
You can't do a change, yeah, it's a weird, you can't do a change order to increase material costs or something.
We can submit our own receipt.
So,
They can probably explain it better.
Nick, yeah, tell us.
no, honestly, I remember sitting in with the folks who are working the grant for us and asking them questions, and they said, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's just how they do it. So I think what the mayor's kind of described is accurate, and Mayor, I think that means the village board would need to pass a resolution authorizing purchase of the steel in the amount of $35,224 from whoever it is that we're buying it from. And I think Jeff and Mayor, we confirmed, right, that the price is through state bid somehow. Is that right?
so, and we'll get that extra added to our grant then?
Yes. So yeah, there's a ton of contingencies in the grant, so there's money there.
Okay.
So that's one of my questions is where are we paying for this until we get reimbursed, and how long does a reimbursement process take?
No, it's all seamless.
Okay.
So it's Steel Tech Fabricators. That's $35,224.
Is this time sensitive for tonight?
Yeah, probably, because they have to order these so they come, so that we have a building.
So is that the cost of the increase or the total cost of the steel purchase?
So this is the cost of the increase.
Was Jeff still saying something?
$35,224. That actually went down because it was almost 50,000 we talked about.
Wow, so we should probably jump on it then?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, you know what you're doing here. Is this a motion of some sort
Yeah.
to spend that amount for that steel from that manufacturer? Such as
Steel Tech, yeah.
Steel Tech?
A second that. Beat you to the punch.
Yeah, I was
Too
talking.
long-winded.
I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna do it now. So, do we have any more discussion on that? Fine.
That piece of chicken.
Oh.
I come with you and have half a piece of chicken.
Okay. We'll vote on that, Ron.
Who seconded it?
Ron?
Yeah, okay.
Rob,
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Fran,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and yes. Okay, so in case we need that, I don't know when we need to order that, but it's probably soon. So that we have a building. Other than that, communications. I think the fire department's doing a car wash Saturday, or was that last Saturday?
That was last
That was
Saturday.
last Saturday, never mind.
I do have a question. You guys are gonna have to schedule some budget hearings.
Yeah,
You bet.
Stop giving us more.
Next Monday.
we got next month, or already 11 o'clock.
Oh, is this gonna be one of those months where we meet every Monday?
Well, so we have the 24th and the 31st, so whichever you.
We do have a three, yeah, we have a three
Bonus week here.
3 week.
Can we get it all done in 1 week?
Do we have, Mike, do we have information from the department heads and stuff yet to be moving
No,
along?
yeah.
Well, we passed it out. They'd have it by then easy.
By what?
We've already passed out their blank ones to fill out.
Right.
So they could have it back next week. That we have.
Yeah, well, we just, but
So should we just?
if we don't have any information, we don't want to have a meeting that day.
I'm saying they could have a meeting, you just have it in 3 days. You could have
Should we do it the 31st? Because then that gives them this week to fill it out, and that gives me next week to. plug into it.
Maybe not. Is that, Mike, is that Mike, is that Memorial Day?
For the next meeting, right?
Yeah, it is Memorial Day, yeah, never mind.
So
That's probably not best.
Tuesday be an option or?
Yeah, we can do it Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 1st of June would be something.
Tuesday's good.
That's my wife's birthday, so I won't be there.
Oh,
We got more excuses, Ed.
I know. I got a million of them.
I gotta,
Throw another date out there.
Department heads are more critical.
Ed, you've been here a number of years. Your aunt has died too many times.
Yeah, I just got lots of hands.
I mean, 21st is feasible for the departments. I mean,
Yeah, do the 24th.
can we shoot for that? And if they
Good shoot for the 22.
Next Monday?
And we'll figure out, we'll throw something in the paper if we can.
Yeah, we'll do it the same way.
Want to do like, you want to start at 6 o'clock and get done by 8 o'clock?
You're funny.
There's nothing to change on these budgets, we're so tight.
Frugal, that's what we're not like, we're frugal,
Well,
especially Jeff, this is gonna be really.
except once you raise the budget 2.5% by buying a sleeper. Other than that,
I know.
Great.
yeah.
So, like the school, they would just raise it, 2 million, but the stimulus is paying for it, so there's no
You're not
tax
supposed to do
increase.
that.
So why don't we just raise our 718?
Not supposed to do that.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
So do we need anything for that?
No, I just put some in the paper that was around. But it's now
Budget workshop.
budget workshop. We're gonna have it here at DPW, we're gonna have.
parking was tough enough over there before.
Yeah, it was 6 or 7 hours.
Monday, I don't care. I'm not open anyway.
All right, start earlier, get better.
Might be light when we
Let's
get out
start
there.
6, I'll see if we can go. We might not be able to make all one night.
Leave it at 8, no matter.
Yeah, not killers.
Okay, so budget meeting next Monday, 6 o'clock.
All right, mayor's report, I don't have anything besides what was already done. And public comment, we got a couple of people.
Uh-oh, get yelled at now.
Pat?
You got a couple of people, or who's first?
Kevin.
Kevin, go ahead.
No, I just want to thank the board for their serious deliberation on the removal of that element of the law. I know it was a tough decision, and that seeker is even tougher than considering the law. The seeker on that kind of law is kind of crazy. But I also want to ask a question. I thought I heard Mayor Barada say that the DEC asked Jeff to request the removal of that section. Is that what you said, Mayor?
Yes, that's what he told us.
FEMA and DC, right?
FEMA and DEC came to him of that, right, Jeff?
Jeff?
The DEC sent us Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We're gonna get the hang of this when we're done with it.
And I can't remember the girl's name from DEC. She's the one that sent us an email with what we could do about the compensatory fill. She gave us a list of doing nothing, getting rid of that paragraph altogether, or there was another one. I can't think of what the heck it was, to tell you the truth.
I think it was modified language.
Those suggestions came from them, not from us.
Somebody had to get a hold of them about that.
Does that answer your question, Kevin?
Yeah, thank you.
I can give you a copy of her email if you like.
Nah, it's okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Kev?
No, well, I thank the board for their continued support of getting into the CRS program and hope it happens sometime in my lifetime. Or
Kevin, let me,
shorter.
are you interested in working with the rest of the people that have been working on this?
I'm helping Julie, but I'm trying to phase myself out of it because it drives me nuts. To be quite blunt.
Okay,
Fair enough.
gotcha.
Next.
All right. You good, Kevin? Pat, you got anything? You know, the other public.
I got nothing other than appreciate the board's due diligence on all these various issues.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pat.
We done?
Oh, yeah.
no.
Thank you to the Fire Department Corporation for allowing us to borrow the training center.
Yeah, thank you.
Monday/Tuesday, because it's gonna be Tuesday soon. All right.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Everybody in favor? Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thanks, Ed.
48.